Right up to the website in a second, or to YouTube actually. Right up to the, okay, great, that's running. Okay, let's see, 1 second here. I want to get in on iPad so I can see what's going on. All right. So the first question we had, we'll get started in a couple minutes on the presentation, and as I go along, there's going to be plenty of time for questions and answers, and this one's going to be very interactive. So Cheryl asked the question of how do I do Zoom on my iPad? And let me share my iPad screen and see if that will let me. So let me do this. I'll show you my iPad.
Who's that handsome guy behind you coming down the hill?
That's some guy about 30 years ago. Okay, you should see my iPad now. Okay, so on your iPad, in the upper right corner where there's 3 ellipses and more, you tap that. And then you tap virtual background. And when you tap virtual background, you hit the plus sign down below and you say select photos. Or you say allow access to all photos, and then you select photos there, and it goes into your photos library, and you can pick out one of those scenes. So I'll take one that I like to put on here. And
oh yeah.
Decisions.
Okay, so this one's kind of funny. You know that monolith that's going around?
Yeah.
Everybody worry about that in the desert. Well, Southwest tweeted this, and to me, I think they won the internet that day. They won Twitter when they tweeted this because they made the monolith look like their little things that they put at the gate for whose numbers are next.
Yeah, isn't that clever?
That was very good. All right, so then Cheryl, did you get that?
Yes, but I have to wait till you leave the screen so I can manage it.
No, not necessarily. You should be able to hit the more in the upper right.
Oh, okay. Yes.
But I'm
Yes,
going
I
to
have
unshare
it.
my
Thank you.
screen now because it's causing all this weird stuff. So now we'll show you how to do it on a Mac.
Okay.
So I will share my screen again on the Mac and click desktop. And so I'm in Zoom, and I'm going to go up to I'm going to go to zoom.us and then click on preferences.
Okay.
Then in preferences, you come down to backgrounds and filters.
Okay.
If you have an older Mac, you may not have this capability.
Well, that's the next.
Well, that's not just you. That's for everybody. So you'll know. So when you fire your screen up and you say under virtual backgrounds, you see, do you see down at the bottom, do not say, what you want to check is, make sure you don't have, I have a green screen. Make sure that's not checked.
Okay.
And then otherwise, if you have none, you come up over here to the upper right and hit the plus sign. And when you hit the plus sign, you say add image. Now, what I do is I take images that I have in my photos library and I export them to my downloads folder so I can go in and get them. And then I just see which one it is. That was actually skiing a few days ago. And there was the monolith. That was my phone before I sent it in. That was my sunset on my balcony. And let's see. Okay, I think I'll add this one. So then when I click that to add it, that's the one you see in the background now.
Ah, I see.
And
Yeah.
so then there's some other features. So everybody got that? Anybody have any questions on that?
No, I got that. That's great.
Okay. So then what you do here is you may have an option on your computer to do video filters. So a video filter would be like this, or like this, or if I'm skiing, I guess I wear a knit hat, or now they need a red nose for Rudolph, or I can. I'm waiting for him to do a Santa one, but they may not. So there's my ski goggles because I'm up in the
There
hill.
you go.
There it is.
So then the other one is you can add studio effects you may have on your computer. And I can, well, I got to take my goggles off to do eyebrows. So I can do a really thick eyebrow, but let's make them a color that'll show up. There they are. So I can go down here and I'm going to add more mustache. And I've got to click on the color wheel and I'll make that green to match also. So now I've got,
There you go.
and it moves with your mouth and everything else.
Oh,
But then, you know, it is the time. So maybe we have to go like this or like this.
mask on.
So we're all safe. So
Gee.
anyway, I'm going to reset those.
Jesus. I'll tell you, we've come a long way, Ken.
Yep. All right. So that's how you do backgrounds and effects. If you don't have it, your computer may be too old, or you may be on an older OS. But anyway, that's
Well, that's not why I'm here.
that's that. All right.
Ken,
Yeah.
on an older one, you just need to go to that where it says stop video or video and
Well, you can
And the
actually do that.
carrot.
But the reason I didn't do that is that doesn't show up on my screen. So
Yeah, but-
another quick way to get to that particular, well, let me see if this will show up. I don't think it does. No, see, my menu bar doesn't show up when I do it. So what
Mhm.
happens is at the bottom of your screen, you see the microphone on the left, and the microphone has a little chevron next to it. But to the right of the microphone, there's a stop video or start video, and then there's a little downward facing caret. And when you tap that caret, that will take you and you go to choose virtual background, and you get that exact same screen I just showed you that was in Zoom preferences.
Mhm.
So, and again, the way you get there originally is you go up to zoom.us, come on down and click preferences, and then backgrounds and filters. And this is the exact same screen you get the other way, but it's the only way I could display it.
Yeah, okay, that's good.
Okay.
Ken,
Yes.
you might also mention that the Zoom app does not update automatically, and they should check every so often to be sure they have the latest.
Yeah, and that's, I agree totally. And so if you go up to the zoom.us and you come down and you hit check for updates, don't do it now. When we're done with the Zoom, and I constantly, anytime I finish a Zoom meeting, if I haven't done it before I join the Zoom meeting, I always check for updates. And they roll out nice features, more security, things like that. So Karen, that's an excellent point, and I agree wholeheartedly.
and there is an update today.
There wasn't one when I checked this morning.
Told me this morning.
Let me check. I'm up to date. Because I update so often.
Yeah.
5.4.4. Okay. Any other questions on Zoom and what to do on the background and stuff there? All righty. So we'll get started. I am recording, so that's good. You guys always want to get the recording. Bob sends out the blast, and they're on the YouTube site that's always there. So it doesn't change. It just gives you the link he does gives you the list of all the previous ones. So, and Karen, was that it? Can I lower your hand? Okay. All right. As I go through, you guys, today, because we're going to be going through a bunch of stuff and we've got plenty of time. It's going to be shorter than usual because there's not a ton to cover. But please, you can ask questions along the way. It's no problem at all. So anyway, looking who all's there. Great. All right. So, so the first thing is, before I get into the home automation, we had Apple give a presentation. This is, those of you that are at the general meeting, this will be a repeat, but Apple introduced some new products. And they're pretty exciting, and I'll go into them a little bit here. Well, come on, I gotta get. There we go. So it's a MacBook Air, a MacBook Pro, 13-inch MacBook Air, 13-inch MacBook Pro, and a Mac Mini using a brand new chip. So Apple years and years and years ago used to have their own PowerPC chip, and that's what was called a RISC processor. RISC, reduced information set computer, I think, or chip is what it was. And that was PowerPC, and that was a collaboration with Apple, IBM, and I can't remember who the other one was, but somebody else did that. Great. Hey, you know what? I'm gonna, Lisa, if you don't mind, I'm gonna make you a co-host too, because Bob's not gonna be able to stick around. And that way, if you see that somebody comes in, pop your participant out and you can admit them to the room.
Okay, got it.
So, and then I've got to remember to make it, in fact, let's remember during the board meeting, I'll make it so we don't have to do admission on that. That was just a while back to keep us from, I have to change the meeting setting. So thank you. Sorry for that distraction, everybody. Because I can't, my cursor doesn't show up when I'm doing a keynote. Anyway, so then Apple went to IBM and, went to Intel from there. And that was actually kind of a good thing because then you could run Boot Camp and you could run Windows on your computer. And it was, and Intel was the preeminent maker of chips at the time. So they did that transition from the old PowerPC to Intel. And then we still had old PowerPC apps. So Apple had to develop some software that would let those old PowerPC apps run on the Intel chip. So that was called Rosetta. And Rosetta would run behind the scenes. You didn't even really know about it. What happened is if it was an old program, it would fire up Rosetta without you even knowing it. So then we went through the Intel chips, and Intel has not necessarily been on the cutting edge of chips for a while. They produce a whole bunch of chips, and they don't specifically produce those chips for Apple. They produce them for everyone, and Apple had to adjust their operating system to work on those chips. And of course, the developers had to make it so that their programs worked on the newer operating system. So part of the problem with Intel chips is even their laptop chips take and use a lot of energy. And the amount of energy that is,
know about these things? I don't.
The amount of energy that that is used in a laptop, the power produces heat, so it makes them heat up, but also it just doesn't make the battery last as long. So when Apple developed the iPhone back in 2007, they initially were using what's called ARM chips, and there were chips on the market that they bought for phones, which obviously use a lot less energy and produce a lot less heat, but don't have quite the capability. So when the Apple did the ARM chip up until I believe it was the iPhone 4, if I'm not mistaken, could have been the 5, but Apple developed their own chip called the A1, and it looked just like this. It had the Apple logo and an A1. And the reason Apple did that was because they weren't that satisfied with the other chips that were out there, and they wanted a chip that was specific to their software, which would run more efficiently. And they felt that the other companies were kind of running behind. So it was a big endeavor. And of course, it was the revenue from the first versions of the iPhone up to the 4 that allowed them to do this. Never the revenue from the Mac would have done it, but they got some really sharp engineers and they developed the A1 chip. And it's used, they license what's called ARM, and it's a type of chip, and it can be built by many people, but the chip, Apple doesn't build the chip because that would be, they're called chip foundries, and that would be very expensive. So what they do is they farm it out and have other people build it for them. So Apple uses Taiwan Semiconductor, or TSMC, and they are on the cutting edge. And let's see if it shows here. So yeah, so up in the upper left corner, they have what's called a 5 nanometer process. So that's like 1,000th or 1,000,000th of a millimeter. It's minuscule. But what happens is when the chip, Intel's mobile chips are out at about 8 nanometers right now, and Taiwan Semiconductor is able to do it at 5. And what that means is they can have a smaller chip, but more importantly, a little shorter chip that has tons of stuff on it, but the data does not have to travel as far because the chip's thinner, and they run much cooler and they run much more efficiently. So the smaller chip like that makes a difference. And so that 5 nanometer process just came about within the last year on the iPhone. And of course, the new iPhone chip is the A14X or A15, I forget what it is. But every year they do a better design, and they have it made for them. But what Apple did is they said, look, you know, if we look at our, like iPads for the last few years have been able to edit 3 4K videos at a time. The amount of horsepower inside the high-end iPad Pros and the high-end iPhone have almost rivaled what the laptops were able to do and the iMacs, which is pretty amazing when you think about it. So the other part of this is they developed a process called SoC. What SoC means, it's system on chip. So previous to this, computers, not iOS devices, but computers had a CPU, which is the central processing unit or the brain of the computer. And they had RAM, which are the extra bit of memory you can put in the computer. And they had storage, which in this case would either be a hard drive or a solid state drive. Well, there's always a pathway of communication between all those devices. And of course, anytime you have communication, there are things where it might get hotter, but also it's slower. So system on a chip is where they try to put everything in there. I should mention the other thing is there's called the GPU, which is the graphics processing unit, and the CPU, which is the main brain, which is the central processing unit. So the CPU is the computer brain. The GPU is the one that goes out and makes it so it shows up on your screen. And like in video games, it's all that action that goes on and things. That's the GPU. Well, with the new M1, Apple has done just an amazing thing. And at the very bottom on the right, just right of center, it says unified memory architecture. So what you have now is in one chip, absolutely this really high, super high-end chip that can do it in the upper right corner, 11 trillion operations in a second. You have the CPU in the chip. You have the GPU now in the chip. It's not, used to be a separate chip. You have the RAM that you used to put in RAM pieces. That's now in there.
Jesus. Oh,
And hang on one sec here.
my God.
So then the old solid state memory or hard drive are now part of that whole chip. So putting it on one chip makes it incredibly efficient. And with the efficiency, there's less heat. And it really just does an amazing job. Unfortunately, when you purchase the M1s, you cannot upgrade the RAM. You can order it with 8 gigabytes or 16 gigabytes currently. Possibly next year it'll go to 32 gigabytes. And your storage. On most of the computers, we've been able to upgrade the hard drive to a larger hard drive or a faster hard drive going forward. Well, you can't now. You need to specify the size drive you need. That's a little caveat though, because everybody's using Thunderbolt 3 or USB 3 or now Thunderbolt 4. So an external hard drive to supplement or complement what you've got internally will be as fast as if the drive was on the motherboard. So it's really not a negative. It won't be any less than it was. But by putting this all together, yes, it makes it so you can't really upgrade the computer as far as memory and storage, but it's wicked fast. So the thing there is you need to get what you need. Another thing I'll point out, RAM in a computer, okay, I'll de-geekify it. So I'll go through this explanation. Some of you may have heard it before. So again, a computer essentially has three main components. And let's think of the old style way. So a CPU, the central processing unit, and RAM, which is memory, and then storage, which is the hard drive or solid state. So I like to equate that to a thing. And let's say you're going to go to the Sac State Library and you have a project that is going to require you to research 30 books to get all the footnotes you need. So you walk into the library with your own CPU, your brain. There's nothing you can do about the CPU. Your brain's as good as it's going to get. There's no upgrade available. That's the CPU. So you go along and you find a desk to sit at. Well, let's pretend that the desk you sit at is one of these little desks like you had in elementary school, where the desk and the table, the desk chair and it are all as one, and you have about, 3 square feet right there. That's going to be very difficult to put 30 books out so you can do all this research. If you had a huge 6-foot long table where you had the whole table to yourself, you could spread all those books out and do your research. That size of your desk is really what the RAM is. And what that means is, if I open up a video, that uses a lot of RAM. If I'm editing a video, it even uses more. If I have a very high megapixel picture and I'm editing that uses a little RAM. If I have 12 programs running on my computer at the same time, that will use RAM. And the other thing is let's say you have some web pages just suck the life out of it. That uses a lot of RAM. So small table versus big table allows you to work on more, work faster, work more efficiently is what more RAM means. The last component of that is storage. So storage is the shelves on the library that have all the books. So when you're going down to do this project, as long as they have the 30 books you need, you don't care how many books the library has. So the size of the library equates to the size of your hard drive. So as long as there's room, they've kept those 30 books you need in the stacks, you're going to be able to do just what you want. Yeah, it might take you a little longer. You might have to go up and down the elevator to get to different levels, etc. And the only time a hard drive becomes a problem and goes slow is when it starts to get too full, especially when you only have 10% left, or really when you start to get a little dodgy at 20%, it will slow things down. And to use the library analogy, the way to think about that is when you go to the library, if their shelves are very, very full and all of a sudden they get 100 new books. Well, if you think about how a library is arranged because of the card catalog, and you have sections of the library and things like that, what happens is if they get 60 new books in archaeology, let's say, and the archaeology section and shelves were already very full, we know that because of the numbering system for the library, these 3 books need to go in this spot, and that shelf is already full. So what has to happen is they have to move 3 new books off the end of that shelf that goes down to the next shelf and then pops off 3 there. So you can see how much harder it is to put books on the shelves if the shelves are already almost full. So that's the equivalent of your hard drive. Now, obviously, if there's tons of room on the shelves, man, those 3 books in the new archaeology section aren't going to make a difference. They just move a few over, they move the bookend over, boom, they're right there. So that's the difference between a hard drive that's too full or a hard drive that has plenty of room. It needs to spend more time finding out where on the hard drive it puts it, and sometimes it has to rearrange it. And that was the old process we used to call defragmenting. So knowing that that's how the traditional computer worked was the CPU is the brain, the RAM is the size of your table. In other words, how big is your workspace? How much room do you have to do the job you do? And then the last one is storage. How much room do you have for all your stuff? And it always comes up, and I'm sure some of you are thinking this or asking this, if my hard drive is 50% full or my hard drive 70% full, or if it's 20% full, does that make a difference? Absolutely no difference at all. The only time speed becomes an issue with how much you have in your hard drive is when it starts to get too full, and that would be above 80%, and it really gets critical around 90%. And part of the reason for that, we think about what's on our hard drive. Our hard drive is our applications. It's all the documents we've made, all the garbage we've stored, all the photos, all the videos, everything else is in there. And again, only when you get too full does it start to slow things down. So the thing is that if you can fill your hard drive all you want until you get to a point. So there's no reason to go in and have to delete a lot if you have a lot of hard drive space. And of course, that slowness has become less of an issue now that solid state drives are more of what's going on. And I have to say, my screen is not showing. And I don't know why. Hang on once. Oh, I think I'm on my. Is my screen showing on you guys? For you guys?
Yes, I see it.
Yes, it's showing. You're great.
Oh, that's what's weird, because my iPad that I use to monitor it there, that fantastic. It wasn't showing on my iPad. I use that to monitor it. All right. So to this point, are there any questions about how that computer works? Because that's the foundation. And I'm going to tell you how the new Apple Silicon changes that. So in that scenario, the book thing, please, if you have any questions, either raise your hand, which is in your participant screen, or go ahead and unmute yourself and ask. Rich, you got a question?
Well, just a comment. That's a great analogy. I like that library business.
Well, to me,
Yeah.
I try to de-geekify it. You guys shouldn't have to know that crap. And by me knowing it, I look for ways to make it visible. And I appreciate that. It was one I made up years ago because, and again, people get confused between storage and memory and things like that. So I'm glad that worked, and I want to make sure everybody. And Mary, you have a question that you posted earlier. Does Apple have its own, hang on, chip? How does it impact multi-platform applications? And her example is Quicken. So, well, Quicken, first of all, is not a fan of you guys, okay? You shouldn't be a fan of them. They're terribly lacking in their Mac, in all of their Mac offerings, with the exception of Mint, which is part of them. But Quicken and QuickBooks, well, you know, I'm going to get into that in a little bit, but the chip doesn't affect it, but I'm going to talk you how it does in a second. So I'll hold off on that until I finish the rest of this scenario. So anybody else, any questions on the library and the book thing? Does that clear? If it's not clear, I can hopefully clear it up. Anybody? Great. So moving on, what happened in this with Apple's unified architecture? They have now taken the RAM and put it with the chip. It's a chip in a chip kind of thing. In other words, it's part of the chip. And they've taken the storage up to 2 terabytes of storage currently, and I'm sure more will come, is also right on that chip. So now the CPU, oh, and by the way, the GPU is there too. So all of those things have rolled into it, and it makes it faster at the expense of us being able to upgrade later. But I got to tell you, the problem with having the CPU on a motherboard and then having the GPU on a motherboard and having the RAM on a motherboard and your connector to your hard drive on the motherboard is parts of those motherboard could fail. I mean, some of us have had hard drives go failure. Maybe the hard drive didn't fail. Maybe it was the connector. You've had RAM go bad. Maybe it's not the RAM, it's the connector. So by Apple controlling all this in one chip, they're tested when they come off the line, and they're great. Now, I have always recommended against, and most people I know, they always say, don't buy the first year of a new car model or when they make a change. You know, car models change every 3 or 4 years, and they completely redo it, and those are the ones that are prone to problems. Well, I was initially thinking that with the new Apple Silicon myself, because I'm one that I don't like to be on the bleeding edge, because it's called the bleeding edge for a reason. But one of the podcasters that I was listening to brought up a good point. Apple has been making these chips for the last 14 years. No, actually, can't be 14 years. 07. Oh yeah, wow. So actually, I think they've been making about 10 or 11 years. So this is a derivation of their previous A chips that the iPads and the iPhones have used. So it's not really a new chip. The M1, M either being Mac or mobile, I don't know what it means, but the M chips are what the new MacBook Pro, the new MacBook Air, and the new Mac Mini are using. But it's a derivation of the current A14X and A15 chip. So, and you're less likely to have failures because everything's on the chip. I just can't, it blew me away. But at the same time, what it has done is Apple introduced a Mac Pro earlier this year, I believe it was, right at the end of the last year. It was right in there. The Mac Pro is a machine for very hardcore people that are in graphic studios. They're doing 4 and 8K movies and things like that. And it's a huge machine. It's a great machine. It's ultra powerful, and it can go up to, you can spend up to 60 grand on the monitor and the computer, but it was the ultimate. And of course, there's IBM chips out there, and probably the chip leader currently is AMD, and there's NVIDIA, and those are all on the PC side. Well, the M1 chip has been tested, and Apple said it's this fast, and you have to look at the presentation. It's amazing, but realistically, this chip is as fast in single command items as any chip that's in laptops. This doesn't count supercomputers, which are hundreds of thousands and millions of dollars, but it is wicked fast. There are no compromises. And the people that are getting them now and doing the tests and the benchmark tests are blown away. Now, it's much more speed than us as normal computer users ever really need, but that speed is great. But for the people that really take these things to the maximum, they're saving time. Because, for instance, if you've ever taken a movie and you've rendered that movie where you have to have it do all its conversions behind the scene and all that, that used to take a long time. Now it's almost instantaneous. So the M1s I'm not afraid of, but here's what they currently offer it with. The M1 has cores in it, and if you look to the right-hand side under Neural Engine, the CPU is up to 8 cores. I'm sorry, it is 8 cores. The GPU currently is offered is 7 and 8 core, depending on what you get, and that's the graphics processing unit. But what's really, really interesting about this 8-core CPU is Apple has divided the CPU into very powerful and very efficient. And that's how it is on our iOS devices, because there's certain things that really need the power to work. And there's other times, well, we can just use that other little CPU part of it for menial tasks. And what that does is you get tremendous life out of your battery. Look at the iPad, for instance. Right now, the iPads are good for about 10 hours of use. Current laptops are between 6 and 8 hours of use. These new laptops are between they're between 10 and 12 hours of use, I believe. I'll have to look at the specs on that. So this new M1 chip, in some cases, doubles the life or doubles the battery time of what the Intel chips would. And it does not heat up. You set it on your lap, you won't know. It's actually, they say it's cool to the touch. So that's the M1. So any questions on Apple? I'm going to show you the devices in a second, but any questions at this point about the M1, please, if I haven't covered it, I want to know. And if you have questions, it's important. Anyone? Mary, go ahead. Unmute yourself.
What would you recommend for like a normal users? It says like up to 8-core GPU, which implies you might have to pay a little bit more to get some of that. And when should we think about purchasing these items?
Great question. And let me go into that, because I'm going to go to Safari and I'm going to go to Apple. And actually, I'm going to give you a little tip here, and don't hold it against me. So you'll notice I'm in the education store. Apple has discounts in the education store. There are not qualifications needed for that. And while it seems like you're circumventing the educators and things, Apple has retailers. I was in the wholesale and retail business for a long time, and a company wants to make sure they don't undercut their retailers so they have a good retail presence. The education store you can access and you can purchase the products in there. And in the terms and conditions, it said you should be an educator, or if you're buying the computer for anyone in education. And so it's your choice if you decide to, but you can do that. So just a little tip, there's no real, you don't have to have an EDU email or anything like that.
And
So-
Ken, excuse me, on that kind of a note, I had heard at one point for government employees or retirees, there was also a discount. Is that accurate?
I believe there's a store for that, and you'd have to check that.
Okay,
That
thank you.
that might require verification. Again, what Apple's trying to do is they want to sell you the product without stepping on the retail, because they run a fine line. You have the Best Buy just across from Galleria Mall and Arden Fair, and you have an Apple store in there too. So it would be, and of course, many times you'll know that it's on sale at Best Buy, but it's never on sale at Apple. And the reason it isn't is because that, not in a town where the Best Buy is right next to an Apple store. It's in towns where there is no Apple store. They've got to have a Best Buy store. So you want to protect those retailers because the margins are razor thin anyway. So yeah. So let's go to the core thing, and then I'm going to answer your other original question too. So if I click on MacBook Air, the tech is here, but I'm going to go right to buy so that we can go ahead and look at the difference. So when we go here, you'll notice there's two versions of the M1 chip. You'll notice they don't talk about speed. Previous to that, the Intel chips would say, oh, it's a 2.3 gigahertz and it's got hyper speed and a turbo and it can do this and that. Well, you only have, they're both 8-core CPU, and you have a difference between a 7-core CPU and an 8-core CPU. And now remember, notice there's a big difference. There's a difference here on the hard drive size, 256 versus 512. So remember this $1149, which is the education price. I'm going to configure this 7-core with a 512 gigabyte hard drive. So I'm going to hit select. So $1149 is the one we're working off of. And I'm going to go down here and change it, make it $100 more. I'm sorry, 100. It was 180 more. So now it's 1079. Actually, I should have opened that in a separate window. 1079 versus 1149. And the only difference between those is it's a 7-core GPU versus an 8-core. And again, the GPU, and to be honest, I think Apple's making less money on the other one, but their appeal was here to try get this into the education market at $899. So realistically, it costs them very little more to build the 8-core chip, but they're putting a little bit extra cost in it so they can have more margin to overcome the margin they're losing on the $899 education price. By the way, this would be $999 and 100 more on there too. So the GPU, if it's 70, what was it, $70 difference or something, if that makes a difference to you, I would go with the GPU because it's going to render pages better, Safari, graphics, things like that. So in that case, it's really up to you. But again, everything else is the same because they don't talk about the speed of the M1. And believe me, they're not hiding anything because this thing has come out crazy fast. So let's go ahead and click this one because what I'm going to show you here will apply to most of the computers. So our choices currently are 8 gigabytes or 16. With the Intel chips, and remember that's the RAM, and the RAM was off on the side, and I've recommended more recently, a lot of you probably have 4 gigabytes. In older computers, you had 8. 16 is really what you need to be productive. Again, remember this is the size of that table. And I've been recommending people go to 32 if they can. but that was the old architecture. The old architecture was where the chip was separate, the RAM was separate from the CPU. Now it's part of it. And the size of your desk is still the same, but for some reason, I just thought of a great analogy. Okay, in my 30 book scenario that we need to use, we're going to have to spread those 30 books out to research this. Well, what if you had an iPad with you that had all 30 books in it and you had a very small desk? The RAM size becomes less of an issue in the new M1s. And all these people that have been doing tests on the M1 have been doing it with 8 gigabytes of memory because it's available. Oh, it doesn't say here, but it's available very quickly. But the 16 gigabytes are not going to be available till later this month. I waited. I ordered a 16 gigabyte. Now, currently, we have the MacBook Air, the MacBook Pro, and the Mac Mini are the only ones with M1 chips. So the MacBook Air, MacBook Pro 13, not the 16, and the Mac Mini. So these have the original M1 chip, and their limitation is 16 gigabytes. After the first of the year, we will probably get a new iMac that has the M1 chip. We'll probably get a 16-inch MacBook Pro. There's talk we might even get a 14-inch MacBook Pro. So those may be a derivation of the M1 chip that allows up to 32 gigabytes of RAM, but we'll see. The other thing is, the only downside I see to these 3 devices right now is there are only 2 USB 3 or Thunderbolt 4 ports. The Mac Mini has 2 additional regular USB ports, but the MacBook Air and the MacBook Pro 13 only have 2 ports for dongles, one, you charge with and everything. And officially, they only support 1 external monitor. Now, there's ways around that. But I think in the spring, if you run a dual monitor setup, or if you need more connections and you need 32 gigs of RAM, you can wait for that stuff to come out. But like I told you, I'm not afraid to go to the M1 because it's really enticing me, and I'm going to use it to replace my 16-inch MacBook Pro from 2016. So right now I have a question from Sykes family. Go ahead. Unmute yourself. Sykes, do you have a question? All right, Karen, I'll move on to you.
I'm back.
Okay, go ahead. Ask your question, and then we'll get to Karen.
I assume Parallels will be updated so you can run Windows apps. Do you know what the situation?
Well, that's kind of in flux right now, and it goes in with what I need to talk to Mary's question about as far as Quicken and other things. So there are people that have been able to run Windows on it. Believe it or not, there's a version of Windows for the Slate that actually works on the M1, and it's faster and it uses Rosetta 2. So remember, so it gets a little bit convoluted here. Remember, I talked about Rosetta, which is where the PowerPC apps were able to run on the Intel machines. Well, we now have Rosetta 2, which is included. It's part of the operating system. And any applications that are not able to run on M1 that previously run in Rosetta, and with Rosetta 2, and Rosetta 2 is showing by every test I've seen made, it's faster on the M1 running the emulator Rosetta 2 than it is running it on the native Intel all the way up except the top i9 with tons of RAM. So it's really interesting. VMware and Parallels, I'm sure will be updating. They have to do a lot. But for right now, if that's part of your mix, I wouldn't upgrade to it. I think it's an issue. So the other things is, as Mary had a question about Quicken and multi-platform things, if they were running on Catalina and they're a 64-bit program, they will run on the M1 because of Rosetta. There may be a few exceptions, but it's my understanding it works fine on that. And then the beauty is when it becomes a program like that is M1, when the developer makes the application M1 compatible, it will just absolutely fly. Additionally, M1, because the M1 chip is very similar to what's in iOS, believe it or not, you'll be able to run some, if the developer allows it, iOS and iPadOS apps inside of M1 on your computer. So if you have an app that you like, it may come in, and there is a way to sneak them in anyway, but there's pretty darn exciting with that. Now, obviously it begs the question, look, we're probably not going to see this. This leads us down the path. If they ever decide to do a touch computer, they can. But instead of making the computer touch, what they've done is they've taken the speed you have in iPad Pro that is touch, and now it goes there. You're just not able to run Mac apps on the iPad, but you're able to run iPad apps on the computer. So I don't look for a touchscreen Mac soon, nor is it expected. Karen, you have a question.
No, actually, this is a comment about the government store. I use Apple's government store, and it is available to both retired and active government employees. And to access it, if you just go to Apple's main page and scroll clear down to the bottom, it lists the education store and the government store.
And is there a verification requirement in the
There
government?
is not a verification requirement.
And
Now,
have you
the
compared those prices to the education store? Are they similar?
They seem to be about the same.
Okay.
And the major saving, though, is in Apple Care is a lot
Absolutely.
cheaper.
Yes.
Now the education store seems to go up and down as to whether retired educators can use it or not. Sometimes they seem to allow it and sometimes they don't. But with the state government employees, it clearly says active and retired.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you for that input, Karen. Matthew, you have a question or comment? Go right ahead.
Okay, did I unmute?
Yes.
Just going back to the, should you buy the M1, version 1 or not right now? And, normally for most users, I've always recommended, buy a refurbished one. Don't buy the bleeding edge. But in this case, since we're switching over to a whole new ecosystem, let's say, I've got to wonder how much longer the old Intel chips are really going to be supported. You might be wise if you need something just to go to the M1 anyway.
Well, yeah, good point. And I definitely recommend the refurbished store also, because you can usually get a discount on it, and they're usually not even used. They were like, for instance, when they came out with the new MacBook Air that's an M1, any stock they had of MacBooks, Intel MacBooks, are now in that quote refurbished store. They actually have the same warranty, have the ability for the same Apple Care. So I encourage that. Unfortunately for me, I'm usually on the edge, and so it takes a while. It'll be a while before the M1s are in the refurb store. Now, the other thing is because of COVID and homeschooling and homework, for the longest times, like I looked the other day, there were no iMacs at all in the refurbished store. And that doesn't portend that anything new is coming. What it is there's just been so many computers being purchased. Now, again, the weird thing here is we've got new hardware. It's a new chip, but it's really a version of the old chip. So it's kind of had its stuff felt already. But I think that also the PowerBook, boy, that goes back. The MacBook Pro 13-inch is the same case that the old 13-inch is in. All they've changed is the chip. And of course, they don't have to put on all the RAM and everything else now. So I haven't heard of any problems with these things. So I'm saying it's good to go, but don't blame me if it goes awry. It's like I always say, when people want to when they want to upgrade, like I've been keeping people from Catalina, and frankly, I'm probably going to skip Catalina and go to Big Sur. And as soon as Big Sur, I would wait till after the holidays. But the grass is always greener, but at some point you have to pull the weeds and mow the lawn. So don't always look that something like a new operating system is better, because it's not always. There are some compelling reasons. And one thing about Big Sur is the ability to run those iOS programs on your computer. And with Catalina, the only compelling reason to upgrade to that was some of the accessibility features where you can do anything you want with your voice. So Matthew, that's a great point, and I appreciate that. Anybody else, any other questions? And getting to these things like Mary asked specifically about Quicken. Well, I encourage anyone that's using Quicken or QuickBooks to start using the online version, because then you become agnostic of the platform. And unless you're using Quicken or QuickBooks to write checks and manage different things, I encourage people to go to mint.com. And in mint.com, which I think it is still an Intuit company, which is the same as Quicken. I'm not sure if they're together anymore, but it doesn't allow you to do transactions, but it shows all your transactions. I use it when I go do my taxes. You can keep your check ledger in there. You can add transactions. You can make budgets. You can do all you want. And it's very safe since it doesn't do transactions, and it uses the same trusted intermediary that QuickBooks and Quicken does to talk to your bank. I have all my credit cards on there. I have all my investment accounts. I have all my banks on there, because I can go one place and see everything. And when I go to do my taxes at the end of the year, some of the places like Chase Bank, they only let you look back 90 days. On Mint, I go back and see I can go back all the way to the date I first started using Mint, mint.com. Mary, go ahead.
Yeah, on that, like I subscribe to Quicken just because we started using it, a gazillion years ago. I've changed over to the subscription. How is that different than the online version?
I think when you're in subscription, you are online, but I'm not positive, because I refuse to use Quicken because they don't like me. And I'm lucky to not have to use QuickBooks.
Well, if I would change over to Mint, I would lose all, it wouldn't be, the history wouldn't be integrated with Quicken.
Absolutely. Right.
Okay.
And so my recommendation on something like that is keep an old computer around that can run it, but don't let it prevent you from going forward. So actually, I'll show you guys a site that's very important. And if we go here to, this goes back to when Lion came out, to see if applications were able to go to newer OSs. It's called Roaring, like the Roaring Lion, apps.com. So I'm going to put in Quicken as the application. And so some people are running Quicken. What are you running? Quicken.
Well, I've got the most recent, whatever it is, but other people may not. I
think Quicken for Mac 2017. Let's just click on it. So now it shows me, well, in Big Sur, it says works fine. But if I click on this, it will show me. Now, these are not official. These are people reporting that it works for them. So you'll notice there's not a ton. There's 2 reports here, 1 report here. But this says, oh, Quicken for Mac works in Big Sur. So more than likely it would work under Rosetta in Silicon. In the new, when it says Apple Silicon, it means M1. But let's look back at another, because I know some people are using 2013 was kind of popular. Quicken Essentials. Now that's a problem. So let's use it. That's one. So if I click that.
This is for people that use it for their finances.
and it doesn't work beyond El Capitan. I have 2 clients that are going to, after they do their taxes, finally get rid of that, because that's terrible that you get invested in this program and it doesn't even work in Sierra.
So it makes sense maybe to start with the new one January 1st to look into Mint. Is
Well,
Mint,
again, make sure Mint does what you want it to do.
Yeah.
It won't write checks, but you can record checks. Okay.
is Mint free, or is it also a
It's
subscription?
absolutely free.
Okay,
You will
thank you.
occasionally get an email from them. Hey, this is a credit card that's good for you, or things like that. But no, it's absolutely free.
Okay, I hope that helped other people who were struggling with some of those.
I think it did. And that's why I wanted to show off this roaring apps, because that's important.
And that will be, I also was looking at the broader thing. That just happens to be one application that I know that is multi-platform and kind of Mac struggles with. Another one, if for people who have games, is like the Sims. I can't remember what company that is. It seems to crash our computer all the time. And I'm just wondering if how the developers, the app developers, are reacting to all this, or if it even makes a difference.
Well, they've been able, so back when they had the Worldwide Developer Conference in June, they could purchase Mac Minis that had the chip from the iPad in it to do all that testing and things. So Apple has made it very easy for them to make the transition, but you know, you can't push a rope, and some developers are lazy. So
in summary, if you have an application like that, you're thinking about whether to upgrade or not, go to the Roaring Apps, check it out, and see if it works for you. Is that correct?
yes, I recommend that completely. And remember that things like Catalina was the first that didn't allow 32-bit apps, which we've discussed in the past. And of course, Big Sur continues with that. It only does 64-bit apps. So that's one way to see it. So the other thing is, there's another question here. Will there be problems, Greg and Cynthia, about advanced programs, Photoshop, Lightroom, or older versions of CS? So if you guys are still online and I have Roaring Apps up, this is a perfect example. So why don't you give me the CS number and let's see what happens. Greg and Cynthia, you guys can unmute yourself, or somebody else. Give me an Adobe CS. What do we want to know? 5.5. Let's click on that. So see, it stopped working at Sierra. Anybody there? Go ahead and chime in if you have what version of CS5? Everybody's really quiet here. I know we got some Adobe users using that. Nothing there. Okay. So let's say Photoshop. Well, we'll do CS5 in Photoshop, and let's see.
Elements 13.
Elements 13. So here you go. So it looks like, and again, remember, nobody has said anything about Mojave and on, but that's for CS5. So let me get rid of some of these. Oops. Okay, so elements, right?
Yeah, elements 13.
And I won't do a whole ton of these, but I'm just trying to see. Elements 13?
Oops.
Photoshop Elements 13?
Yeah, that's it. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so again, you'll notice on the left, it's showing me the comparison, but if I click on Elements, now it gives me the information that people have found.
Ooh.
So again, consider this set here. You only have 2 people making these things.
Yeah.
So I would, at that point, I would do some Google searching and see what it is.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, again, you have Rosetta 2 to help with that transition. Let me look here at any other questions. Someone did ask, just for everybody's information, and you guys can hit the chat window and you see a lot of stuff there, but government pricing is more than just the Mac. It's watches, Apple TV, etc. And then Rich Pearson brings up, using Banktivity by IGG instead of Quicken. And Rich, wasn't Banktivity used to be called Money Dance, didn't it?
It's called iBank, I think.
Oh, iBank, that's right. Money Dance was a different one. So, and I remember you made that transition years ago to when I think it was still iBank, if I'm not mistaken.
That's correct.
So Barbara asked a question, do you need a media player to M1 computers, or is it what comes with it most adequate to play videos you find online, etc.? So any of the current ones that work for you will work on the M1. I mean, basically it's built in, it's a graphics card, but you shouldn't need any media players that you don't currently need. And for the most part, it's going to handle it well because the GPU is there. But you know, Netflix should work just fine. And remember, Apple spent a ton of time and a ton of resources making Rosetta 2 work. So I don't see a problem. That would have come up by now because these people have had the test unit, not just the test units, but they have the real units. So I want to go back in and show just a couple other things that when you configure. So it's $180 more to put 16 gigabytes of RAM, and it's always better to have more than you need. And then remember, your internal storage is not upgradable. So you want to choose which one you want there. And of course, there's different things. But I want to go in, and if I go back to the MacBook Pro, it's a little different. So we have the MacBook Air. So we click on Mac. We go to MacBook Pro. So we have a 13 and a 16. The only one available in an M1 is the 13. And when you click buy, you will have a choice between a 13-inch. First, 16s are going to be all Intel, okay? So no interest to me anymore, unless you want to get the last good version of an Intel. But frankly, I don't. It's just everybody's been blown away. So in the 13-inch, oh, it's not there now. There was earlier an Intel choice. I don't see it now. So disregard what I was going to say. 2 weeks ago, there was an M1 or an Intel. So realistically, these are both exactly the same, and they're $200 apart, and it has to do with the size of the drive because the GPU is 8-core and the CPU is, of course, 8-core. So this is $13.99. So when I configure this, it should be $200 for the 512 SSD, which is funny. Oh no, it was 180 there. So that makes the exact difference in price between the two. But what'll happen is most of the time, this lower configuration will be what's in the store. So I'm going to exit the store and just look one other thing really quick and see if it still shows it. Because that's weird. They just took it out of there. Yep. No choice for Intel. What it was, they probably still had some stock of the 17-inch, I'm sorry, the 13-inch MacBook Pros. So the other one that's new is the Mac Mini, and we'll look at it. So the Mac Mini is an M1, and when you go to buy there, they are both M1s. And again, the $200 difference, and this is retail price. This isn't in the education store. The difference is the size of the hard drive. So, oh, look, they still got an Intel one down below. They still offer the Intel. I'm not saying anybody would want it. Let me go back to that, see if it was below in the 13-inch, because it wasn't. It used to be beside it. Ah, they still have the Intels. All right. So here's the M1s. What it was is they had Intel on the left and or M1 on the left, Intel on the right. But now what they've done is these are this is, you could configure the computer either way to have the different drive. So here are the Intel MacBook Pros. So anyway, all right, we're going on forward. So please ask me if there's any questions you want about the M1. I've beat this horse to death, but it's really become something. And we have the holidays coming up. You may be buying presents for yourself, someone may be buying presents for you, but I just wanted to bring that up to speed. And of course, it comes with Big Sur. So you're going to be running Big Sur, but the computer came with Big Sur. So it's unlikely you'll have problems. Big Sur has had a few little glitches, but for right now, it's still more solid than Catalina was at this point. But I still recommend waiting till after the first year, unless you're buying a new machine.
You recommend, Ken, do you recommend the warranty extended for this?
So I don't make an official recommendation because I don't want it to come back and bite me. So how's that for a deflection, non-denial, denial? Sounds very political. Here's what I always think is, you look at the extended warranty, and a laptop is more likely to have damage or get abused more than a desktop. So I do weigh a little bit more towards it on a laptop. But when I look at the price of it, and again, this is another advantage to the education store. So let me get to it. All right, I'm going to go at the bottom because it is less money there, and we'll talk about Apple Care. So where is it? Oh, the education. Oh. Sorry about that. All right, I'm not in the education store. So let me get back there. Oops, I don't want that in my bag. Okay, so if I'm in the Mac, I'll go to a MacBook Air, for instance. And when I click buy, you'll come down here. And once you put it in when you hit select, you then get your choices. So as we're going through these choices, by the way, if you have a not so old Mac, they give you a pretty fair trade-in value. In fact, I'll offer it right now. I have a 16-inch, I plunked in my 16-inch MacBook Air that's a 2016, has 1 terabyte of RAM and 32 gigabytes of memory. It's a great machine. It's always had a case on it and everything. When I did it here, it came up to $780. If somebody wants to buy it from me for $800, it's a great machine. And that way I don't have to send it in, and you're getting a good value because they go for about $1,400. But anyway, if I were to click on this, I actually at the main, I'm just going to go with the basic here on the MacBook Air. And then we come on down, and actually when I add it to the bag, it's going to ask me about Apple Care. So Apple Care on the laptop is $229. So when you think about your price on this is, and I'll actually add it to the bag so we can see it. So you've got a $900 computer and you're spending $225 to protect it. To me, that's, and the nice thing is you get, so we'll click on that, and you get extra support. So you get, normally with all the computers, you get 90 days of technical support and 1 year of the warranty. When you get Apple Care Plus, it extends it, but it also now covers damage. So there is a deductible, but $99 for screen damage and stuff like that. So those help a lot. You used to have to do it. You had to do it within 14 days. They've extended it. It's within 60 days you can purchase it. If you're thinking about it, I recommend getting it from day one. because then it's integrated with it when you purchase it. And let's see here, it takes the Apple warranty. It used to be 3 years, and I'm not looking. Anybody got that? I'm missing it here. For how long? That's weird.
It's in the top sentence, 3 years.
There it is. Yes. So it takes it and extends your complimentary tech support that's only 90 days is good for 3 years. And your limited warranty goes for 3 years. In addition, you get this Apple Care Plus, which gives you some damage protection also. So I think that you have to look at that. Is it worth $299 normally or $229 in the education store against an $800 machine? Now, if you get a MacBook Pro and you spec it way up, then it makes more sense. And it makes more sense a little bit more because remember, you can't replace the RAM and you can't replace the hard drive. Ray, you have a question?
Yeah, I just, on this technical support, if we have a problem with one of our computers or the iPads, we call, we use the app on our phone, and we've always gotten help. And if we've gone to the Genius Bar, we've always been able to go in, even after Apple Care expired.
Absolutely.
So I'm confused.
Well, this would be, so there's help and there's repair.
Oh, okay. Okay.
So the technical support is predominantly the phone in, and Apple is very loose on that. So yes, I mean that's the other thing is, you know, we pay more for an Apple product and people call it the Apple tax, but you're in fact usually communicating with someone that speaks in your language. They're usually in the US and you usually get pretty good support. Now it's been tough because they still need more people and but it's still the best ever. But yeah, as long as the machine's not obsolete, they'll still take a look at it. I think that's the beauty of what you're paying for Apple. But the official support is what this is.
Yeah, I, 6 months ago, well, it was before COVID shut down. We took our iMac in and they couldn't fix it, but that Core Care did.
Core Care, yeah.
He knew exactly what to do.
Yeah.
But anything else, yeah, they've been great.
Yeah. So again, that you just kind of look at yourself. And then Barbara has a question. Do you get more support if you buy Apple Care? Yeah, I think we just covered that. You get the Plus, which gives you some damage protection. It's limited the incidents. What they're doing here is trying to keep abusers out. And also they charge a nominal fee for certain things, again, to make it so the program can stay attractive so that they're not going crazy on it. And that's great. That they didn't used to offer. So if there's any other questions on that, go ahead. Otherwise, I'm going to go back to Keynote here. Again, those are the lineups. And when they presented this, they gave a commercial kind of in fun. And if you remember the old I'm a Mac, I'm a PC ads, so they brought back part of that.
Stop, hang on, wait, one more thing. Hi, I'm a VC. Is there time for questions? Good, because I have one. Why make all these advancements? What's the point, right? Oh, you're so quiet now. Look, I'm a machine, I'm proud of it. That's my fan. Longer battery life, plug it in. Where are you going? Just plug it in. Fast, I'm still fast, check it out. Still got it. PC, still got it. I've always been there. I always will be. Fast. Okay. My battery's drained. I gotta go plug in. Good luck. Woo! Outlet!
What he said there at the end was outlet. He needed to plug in. So it was to punch about how long the battery lasts in the M1. So in the new M1 machines, you're going to be able to go pretty much all day without having to charge it, which is fantastic. So other than if you buy an M1 machine, I'm still recommending against Big Sur for right now. Don't do that to yourself. Yes, only about 10% of the people are having trouble with it, but there are some deal breakers in there. So be careful. It's Mac OS 11, by the way, no more 10. I would wait till it's 11.1 and wait till after the holidays. And I tell people too, hey, if you're going to be doing your taxes on your computer, maybe wait till after your taxes are done. Oh, that was for somebody else. Bless you, whoever that was. Okay, so we're rolling off of M1. Yes, I've ordered my MacBook Pro 13-inch with 16 gigs of RAM and the 2 terabyte drive somewhere on probably by the end of this month. So before I move into the home automation, which is why you're all here, I did want to do the M1s, but if there's any questions on that, on the new Macs or anything, please go ahead and ask right now, or we can do it later too.
I have a quick question. If you're going to use your M1 laptop at home most of the time, and so you're going to run it by plugging it in, should you take your battery out when you're doing that and then just put the battery in and charge it if you're going to take it someplace?
Good question. Now, before you used to be able to remove the batteries, but no, these batteries are in there just amazing. So there's essentially 4 separate batteries and they're stuck in there, and believe me, it would take hours to remove the battery. But your question about then the other part of that unasked question is, should I charge my computer all the time? Here's my philosophy on that. The current batteries are computer controlled, whether it be the iPhone, the iPad, or the Macs. And they do not continue to charge when they're full, and they know what they're doing and they're computer controlled. After many years, if you become very fastidious about, okay, I got to do my phone in and out, I got to charge this way, oh my gosh, what's going to happen? And you freak out about it. Over time, yes, you will have your battery have better life, but it will be such a minimal amount, it's not worth the hassle. And I'll give you an example of that is, well, for instance, I have an electric car. If I were trying to manage my battery in my electric car and all of a sudden I needed to go somewhere, I need to charge my car. And I take you back to the sad situation up in Paradise, California, a couple of years ago, when there's a lot of people I talked to. I know of 3 individuals that had 8 minutes to evacuate their home. And when they evacuated their home, laptops are a whole different thing, but their phone. If you decided to not charge your phone overnight because you're trying to manage your battery and do this, do that, when you left there, because you might not have remembered to pick up your charger, it's not there when you need it. So the slight amount of battery degradation you get if you become the best battery manager there is not worth the hassle, nor is it worth the inconvenience of, oh my gosh, I'm going here all of a sudden and I don't have enough battery in there. So if it's stored, any battery, if it's stored for a great length of time without being used a long amount of time, you want to charge it to about 50% and let it stay there. On the other hand, you never want it to drain fully because that's harder on a battery. And in fact, as we're finding in electric cars, having your battery go below 20% is almost as damaging as trying to overcharge it. The batteries will never overcharge. They're computer controlled so that they will not overcharge. Okay?
So you can plug your laptop in and just leave it plugged in all the time. That wouldn't be a hassle.
My laptop's sitting right next to me. It's plugged in. I haven't used it for 2 days.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah, but that's a very good question. All right. Any other Apple hardware M1 questions? This is the time. And if not, we can you can post them in the chat, and I'm going to move on with home automation. So we're going to talk about home automation. Was there something come up? I heard something.
Yeah, I have one thing to say about Quicken.
Go ahead.
QuickBooks sold Quicken to a separate company
That's right.
a year ago. And I always used it on my Windows machine because I had to. And I've always hated it for Macs, but they've done a lot since then. They now do annual things, so you have to buy it every year.
It's a subscription.
But it works pretty well now, and they're doing upgrades a lot. So they've really changed their attention to Macs.
Good. Well, I appreciate that. And do you know if that holds true with QuickBooks?
I don't use QuickBooks. I never have. So
Karen,
I don't
is
know.
it still into it for QuickBooks? Don't know. So anyway, yeah, so that's good news. But the other thing is, look at what you need. If you are printing checks and you are actually managing things rather than just trying to reconcile, then you may not need it. But that's good to hear on Quicken. But again, part of that too is you have all this legacy information and you don't want to re-enter your chart of accounts and all that other garbage.
Exactly. The other thing I wanted to say, since you're waiting for the new 16-inch, I suspect that they're going to make it smaller in terms of the battery, because they don't need as much battery since the new M1 is so good on battery. So I think there's going to be a new case for it. But
well, yes, and actually, but so remember the 16-inch, the size consideration right now is, now they may make it thinner, but it's the size of the screen. If it's a 16-inch, the only thing they can do is reduce the size of the bezels, and they've already done that quite a bit because it's in the same footprint as the old 15-inch was. So, and I'm not waiting for the 16-inch, but if people are, I think the 16-inch will have more ports on it. And whether it's a 16-inch or they call it a 15, they're talking about a 14. But yeah, they're putting them in the existing cases, which are all fairly thin already. But and Apple always runs that balance. How thick do we make it for what battery it is? So yeah, there'll be some changes, but remember on a laptop as on a phone or an iPad, you're limited by the screen. But yeah, and I think it will, I think they'll have a more powerful version. They'll have more of the USB 4, I'm sorry, Thunderbolt 4 ports, and they could do less battery. But again, if it's a little more powerful processor, they may want to keep the battery similar size and just have the extra length of it, because they're really touting as an all-day battery on a laptop now.
okay, I have a 2018 15-inch, and I have to say it's so slow in just starting it up. So I'm looking forward to the M1.
Wow, and you have a solid state on it. Yeah, and that's the thing. I mean, if you think about how quick an iPad fires up versus your computer, that's the same chip we're talking. So
yeah, and by the way, Quicken does do work with the new chip already. That's how quick they updated.
good, fantastic.
Okay, thank you.
So that's good news, and Mary, hopefully that makes you happy there.
Ken, you mentioned limited ports. Do you know a good powered hub if you need to plug in more than the number of ports that comes with it?
Yeah, so you get these, everything's called dongles now. So there are some out there. I would first, for the best ones, look at Apple's website and which ones they offer. And what I generally do, and I've done this for my 2016 MacBook Pro, I get one that has multiple things on it. I can run a VGA screen, an HDMI monitor. I can run all kinds of bunch of USB ports and things like that off of it. So, but stick with, you may pay a little bit better, but you want to go ahead and stick with the better brands, because it's, it'll either work or it won't work. But if you look on Apple's website, Belkin is on there, and there's some others that you want to. And I look at Apple's website because they've usually vetted that product. And then the other thing is your charging cable will go to the port directly. Some of them will allow the power to go through the dongle to charge your computer. Some don't have that capability. So you use one port for power and one port for that. But if it's got a ton of them. Now, in a situation where you're going to, like, for instance, I have a 2012 iMac that I'm using right now with you guys. I'm replacing that, And rather than have a laptop and an iMac for the time being, I think I'm going to just be running my laptop, and I've got to run multiple things off of it. But so I have a consideration with how many ports I can use. But there are things those are portable that you can take with you, but there are also true docking stations. And the docking station can connect to your laptop with one cable, and then it has all the peripherals on it. So and that way, the nice thing is if you have a monitor and a keyboard at home that you want to use, when you get back there, you're only plugging in one cord, and that does everything. And so that's the nice thing of it, this whole dongle setup. Obviously, you've got memory card readers for your camera and things like that. Your dongles that have a lot, look for a 7-in-1 or a 6-in-1. All right, good question on that, because that is important. So in home automation, it's a scary subject to some people. And as I've always talked about in the past, convenience versus security is a sliding scale. And where you decide to fall on that scale is your choice. I'm going to try throw everything out to there so you can see what's up. Now, there are three main choices for home automation that we're going to talk about today, and they vary, and I'll explain that as we go through them. So Apple's HomeKit is the most secure, the most private, and it's Apple, you trust them. Years ago, HomeKit wasn't the ticket. I'll dig into that in a minute. Amazon Echo in general is pretty secure. Amazon off, of course, mine just got triggered doing that. And then Google is the least secure. And if you want to think about this, think about Facebook, Google, Amazon, and Apple. So when I look around at you, my audience there, I'm going to ask the question, who out there is a customer of Apple? Everybody should raise their hand. Who out there is a customer of Amazon? Everybody would probably raise their hand. Who out there is a customer of Google? Well, you might raise your hand. You use Google search. You don't have to have their products because they don't make many products. And then the last one I'll ask is, who out there is a customer of Facebook? Who uses Facebook? Who's a customer of Facebook? Well, let's go back and look at this. None of you are a customer of Facebook unless you're a business and you buy their advertising. Anyone who is on Facebook is actually the product that Facebook is selling to those businesses. So you are not Facebook's customer. So therefore, since you're getting it for free and they're making money by selling your demographics and many of the other things that they do, you are not their customer, you're their product, you're who they sell. And that's fair. It may not be right, but it's fair because you're getting Facebook without having to pay any money for it. So then let's move over to Google. Now, if you have an Android phone, you may have got it from Google, so you're kind of a customer there. But I would say Google, you're still a customer. And the way that works is if you use Google Mail and you don't use Apple Mail to see it, but you have Gmail showing up on your Safari, you'll see ads, you'll see different things that they'll put on there. And if you go do a Google search, there'll of course be ads, and they'll be targeted to you. And they're anonymously targeted, but in fact, Google, you are the customer. I'm sorry, you're not the customer, you're the product. And the customer of Google is the businesses that pay for those ads to be targeted to you. Now, both Facebook and Google, and let's not go political, but let's just talk about what they've done politically. They are censoring, and I don't care whether you're conservative or liberal, but both Google, Facebook, and Twitter are censoring conservatives on their sites and blocking them. And that's wrong. but we don't have any battle against it because it's free to us. But I am using Facebook so much less because of this. And because I just don't think it's fair. It's free speech. And there, just a little aside to that is, there's a government rule that's called Rule 230, which makes it so, for instance, a newspaper is responsible for the content they create. In other words, if they put in their newspaper that Ken Spencer did this and did that and all this other untoward stuff, if it was untrue, I could sue them for libel. On the other hand, Google and Facebook and Twitter, under Rule 230, they're not a content creator. What they are is, all of us put stuff up there, like in Facebook when you post something. Someone could post on Facebook and say, Ken Spencer did this, did that, did all this other stuff, and I would have no right to sue Facebook because they're protected under Rule 230 because they didn't create that content. So what happens is that I have no right to sue them, nor should I be. So it's essentially a forum. It's the billboard that everybody posts their messages on, and when you were in college and things like that. So the college is not responsible for posting that. Everybody's responsible for their own post. So therefore, they've been indemnified from being sued for libel and slander because they're not creating content. They're just posting everyone's content. But the problem is, now they're starting to shape the content. In other words, they have people that are determining if they think that something is true or false or wrong or against what they like. And so therefore, they're not strictly a content creator, but they're actually changing content. So they're going to be running into some trouble with the Rule 230 because they are shaping content. The whole idea of an open internet was that anyone can speak what they want, good or bad. And so there's some issues with that. And because of that, I'm listening, and I'm just, and Facebook changed their what they're doing on the interface lately, and it's terrible. I am working away from Google. I use Google because it's the best search, but I'm going to DuckDuckGo because they are not shaping it. Google did the same thing with their Google search. They would actually prioritize in their algorithms that if you searched for certain things, it wouldn't show you some of these articles that are out there and things if it was against what they thought and wanted. So they were shaping it, not necessarily blocking, just not making it available. So that being said, again, back to the whole thing, Facebook is free to use, so you're the customer. Google, whether it be the Google does this home automation, again, they're not making anything off the product. Moving on to that, if you guys have ever bought anything from Amazon, you are definitely a customer of theirs. So being a customer of theirs, Amazon off, being a customer of theirs, they're probably striving more to protect you as a customer because they don't necessarily sell your demographics, and everybody's worried about these devices that are constantly listening. Well, I got to say that I'm going to say the A word. I'll just say Am has done a good job of taking care of that. And all of these devices are, quote, listening all the time. But I can assure you, because the hackers would go in and tell us if they weren't, with the exception of Facebook, these three devices here are only listening for the wake word. And with Apple, the wake word is hey, and then the word Siri. And with Am, it's one of the four wake words you have there. They are not recording it the rest of the time or anything else. You can opt in to have your voice done anonymously to help with their support. But again, you're a customer of Am. Am sells you products. They would not do anything to jeopardize that. Okay. And Apple, of course, we're all customers of Apple or we wouldn't be here. And we know Apple's mantra and huge differentiation on everything they're doing is privacy and security. And that's how they're trying to differentiate themselves from the others. I got to tell you, with home automation though, until recently, for the last 3 years, AM has been better because there were more devices available because they don't require as much privacy and security as Apple does. But I'm happy to say that there's a lot more HomeKit stuff available, and anything new I'm doing, I'm going towards HomeKit. I have a lot of stuff now that works on AM. So I'm going to talk about the Ecobee and the Ratio, which are it's a thermostat and an irrigation controller. I'm going to talk about light switches and plugs, and Ring doorbells, door locks, and ceiling fans. And then we'll have Q&A at the end. But also, as we go along, if you have any questions, you can unmute yourself. You can click the participant screen out. And when you click the participant screen out, there's a raise hand button, or on the iPad, you tap the more button and it says raise hand up in the upper right. Or go ahead and post in the chat window, which is also another kick out. You tap the chat and it goes out. You can ask a question there. So any questions up to now? I'm open. Unmute yourself, raise your hand. All right. So security versus that, security convenience we already talked about. So here are the main players, and these are the stickers you're going to want to look for on boxes, on websites, things like that. Works with Apple HomeKit, Alexa, and Google Assistant. Now you'll notice on the left side, I have one over there that's called Smart Things. This is a picture right off of the web. Smart Things is predominantly Samsung, and I wouldn't worry about that because there's not enough to care, and you probably don't have, it's not in our ecosystem. So you don't have to be in one ecosystem or the other. But right now, I'll just give you an example. I have in my home automation, my ceiling fans, my ceiling fan lights, my thermostat, my irrigation controller, my garage door, my front door lock, my security system, and I can't think about how many others there are. But obviously my thermostat is a different company than my irrigation system, and my front door lock is a different company than those, and my garage door opener is a different one than that. So I have apps on my phone for all of those. So we're not even talking about HomeKit or any of these others right now, because you have the app directly with the phone or the iPad or even on your Mac. So I can go in and control all those devices on my iOS device. But the beauty of being Alexa or HomeKit compatible or Google Assistant compatible, Alexa off. I've got way too many devices here. That's my TV controller, by the way, because it's named the A word, and my other device is named AM. So by the way, the AM devices, you can have 3 names for the device for the wake word. The A word, Alexa, or AM, or computer, or you can say the word echo. And all of those will wake it, and you can set it. Like in the room right here, I have 4 different devices, so they each have a different wake word, and it's one of those 4. Anyway, so we got back to saying that all these devices have the, I can use my iOS to adjust all of these things, my temperature, my garage door opening, etc. But that's really a pain. Think about this. When I go to bed in the evening, I want to have my thermostat get set to a certain level. I want to make sure my lights go off or dim to where I want them. I want to make sure my front door is locked, and I want to make sure my garage door is locked or shut. And there's other things, my ceiling fans off, etc. So when you have either HomeKit or the A word or Google Assistant, all those 5 different things that I have aggregate together. So HomeKit itself controls all of them, but the nice thing is it doesn't have to control them individually. I can set what's called a scene and say, I'll say the word hey and the word Siri and say, I'm going to bed right now, or good night. And by using that term, it will then take all of those 5 devices and set them for what I've predetermined for it to do. So again, they're all work on their own, and they'll even work through Siri if it's HomeKit. Individually, I can tell the garage door to open or close, but I can also put them together in a scene or a group and let it do that. And that applies to the other devices. In my particular situation, my ceiling fan and my ceiling fan light in my master bedroom and in my kitchen only work with AM. They don't work with HomeKit, but I've purchased recently Hunter ceiling fans that work with all of them, and they are HomeKit compatible. So I look for devices like, well, these are, of course, the home one. We have the HomePod, and actually the newest thing with the HomePod is the HomePod Mini, the original HomePod. This is kind of the center of your voice activation of all of these things. So the Apple HomePod was $299. You can usually find them for $199, but they've come out with a beautiful new one called the HomePod Mini, which is right here, $99. And of course, it only works with Siri and HomeKit. The Google one in the center, that's not the most current one. And then we have tons of different Amazon devices, and the AM devices, they've updated them recently. You can have a little Echo Dot, or you can have a big one that gives great music. And again, it only works with, they don't cross over. HomeKit things don't necessarily work with Alexa and back and forth, but many devices work with them themselves. All right, again, you're balancing the safety and the risk. I got to tell you, I have no concern at all with this stuff. Now there's the new HomePod Mini right in the middle. But as you can see, this is the Apple home screen. And when I say home, it's their HomeKit, they used to call it. But now it's that logo of home in the top. And it shows up on all your devices. And then you can have your different rooms and your different scenes and things like that. But it works across platforms. Many HomeKit compatible devices you're able to control with your Apple Watch, and surely you can control it with your iPhone and your iPad. The Apple TV becomes kind of a HomeKit hub, but realistically, the best HomeKit hub, the HomeKit controller for voice is the HomePod. But remember, with any of your devices, your newer Mac devices, you can say the word hey and the word Siri, and it will spring to attention for you. This blew me away because I hadn't looked at this page in a long time, and I will actually post this. Give me one sec here. I will post this. If you guys pull out the chat window, I'm posting this in the chat. So you can always click that link and it'll open it in Safari. So I was blown away when I went here, because when you click on each of these, it gives you all the particular companies and models that are HomeKit compatible. In fact, I've been shopping recently for a new router, so I immediately went to HomeKit to there and clicked on the routers and saw the two Eros and the Linksys that are available there. So if you're looking for garage doors, boom, you check there. You're looking for HomeKit compatible stuff. And if you look across the top, all three of those kind of fit together. AirPlay would be if you're sending it to a music device or a screen. I will mention a lot of us have cameras now. A lot of you use the Wise camera. We have other cameras out there. Generally speaking, when you have the cameras around your security cameras and things like that, with Wise, you don't pay a fee to have it online, and they keep it up there for, I think it's 7 or 14 days, and you can download it. But after that, it goes away. Ring, your Ring doorbell, things like that, all the same thing. Well, the other thing is they're storing it on their server. And for the most part, those places, you shouldn't worry. They're very secure and it's not really an issue. But I would rather have Apple store my stuff. So if it's a HomeKit compatible, camera, it actually stores it on your own iCloud, which we know is very safe and secure, and it does not count against your iCloud storage space. So if you're looking at cameras and you want to do it right, I would look at HomeKit compatible cameras. Garage doors, faucets. I have a story about that in a minute. But anyway, so that's the page. If you look in the chat window, you can just click on it and that's fine. So one sec here. All right, so moving on. This shows you an interface, and it's the iPhone and the iPad, and these are predominantly the best places to set them up, but you can get them up on newer versions of the operating system on your computer. And you'll see there, it says fan, light. It doesn't have to say which one it is. It already knows what it is. It just says fan, light, shades. By the way, many of the shades are available now. IKEA even has automated shades. I don't think they're HomeKit compatible, but I know Hunter Douglas does have HomeKit compatible shades. So the Ecobee is the first one I'm going to talk about. There are other options out there. There's Honeywell, there's the Nest, and a few others. Nest is owned by Google, and so I have a little less trust in that. Honeywell is Honeywell, and it does what it does. I'm not positive it's HomeKit compatible, and I'm not sure about Nest either, but I prefer the Ecobee. And part of the reason I like the Ecobee is because the newest ones actually have the Amazon Alexa, nope, there it went. Amazon Alexa stuff in their cadence, but also it's HomeKit compatible. And if you look in the upper left, those are little sensors. So Ecobee always came with sensors. Now you can buy it with or without additional sensors. And I'm going to tell you in a thermostat how that works. So for instance, I'll take my house as an example. The thermostat for most people is in the hall. And most people don't care what the temperature in the hall is, because that's not an indicator of what a room is that faces the setting sun or things like that. So the Ecobee has obviously a temperature sensor, a thermostat, or a thermometer in it on the main device. But then you have these other little satellite things, these little sensors you can put anywhere you want. In my instance, I have a sensor in my kitchen and I have a sensor in my master bedroom. My master bedroom it's very exposed to the sun, and it gets warm later in the day in the summer. So what I tell Ecobee to do is I say, first of all, I disable the sensor that's built into it in my hallway, because I don't care what temperature the hallway is. I tell it to, during the middle of the day, look at the one in my living room area or in my great room and have that be the temperature you put there. And in the afternoon and evening, I say, well, let's use the temperature of the sensor that's in my master bedroom. And so therefore, it's always what I want. And believe it or not, because I'm not having to, if all of a sudden the hallway is really cold in the winter and it heats up, I don't care. If whatever, it goes by whatever temperature is in my bedroom. So the other thing is, let's say you go on vacation. We all set our thermostat down. Well, let's say you forget. You just go to your iPhone app, you pull up Ecobee and say, oh, let's put that down to 55 degrees. I have a lot of friends with second homes up in Tahoe. They set it down. They have to keep it on, the heater on a bit so the pipes don't freeze. But as they're going over Donner Summit, they pull out their phone and they turn on the heater in the house. And by the time they arrive at the house, it's 68 degrees or whatever it is they wanted to set. But the rest of the time, it was at 55. So these are great devices. They're easy to install. If you have an upstairs, downstairs where you have a 2-stage system, there are some challenges, but I have to say ecobee support is fantastic. And you will make up lots of money. You'll save lots of money because it will be more efficient. Those of you that are in SMUD and PG&E, they do offer rebates on these and other thermostats. Any questions on ecobee or thermostats in general? This would be a great time to ask. Okay. Now, Rachio, there are other irrigation ones, but Rachio seems to be the one that does pretty well. But I have to say that I don't use automation. Well, I do, but I don't tell it what to do on my sprinklers very much. I set Rachio as a home device because what I love about it is first of all, if like I have a 6-station irrigation system. So I just took the 6 wires out of the old thing that had a manual control. Well, it had a controller that was always really hard to set and everything. And when it failed, I lucked out. I went and got a Rachio and I hooked it up. It's hooked to my Wi-Fi. It's hooked to my internet. All I did is plug in the 6 wires in the back. And then I configured it on my phone because my phone's on Wi-Fi and my Rachio's on Wi-Fi. And when I configured it, it asked me questions about, well, what kind of soil type do you have? Okay. How steep is the slope of your front lawn? Is it shaded part of the time? It asks you all these pertinent questions so it knows how much it should water for you. So it increases your watering efficiency. Many people end up using 30%, actually 70% less water than they did, but you're likely to use between 30 and 50% less. And then the beauty is you can go tweak those settings. If in fact it turns out in summer it's not giving me enough water on my lawn, I can adjust the settings in there. Also, when you go to set your, what are called your, is not stages, what is it?
Zones.
Zones, excuse me, thank you. When you set your zones, you actually can take a picture. If this is, say, the front shrubs, you take a picture of that and it'll say zone 1 and the picture behind what you're seeing shows those shrubs. So when you're going to do this, you know exactly which one it is. It's very simple. And so the best part is if I go out and I say, well, I want to see if my sprinklers are working. So I go into the Rachio app and I say, just turn on zone 1 for 3 minutes. And I go around and sure enough, it does it. And believe it or not, I can say it was Siri too, but I just do the screen and I do it. And sure enough, it goes and I see what's up. So you can go totally manual. But another stage of automation this adds to it is it knows your street address because you entered it when you created an account. And it will find the nearest weather station, which is what the iPhone does when you look at weather. And it will determine if, for instance, this time of year, if there's a freeze alert, it will determine that it shouldn't water anything tonight because it's going to freeze. And it does this automatically. You don't have to do a thing. You can obviously turn that off if you want. It senses if rain's coming, and it will not turn my sprinklers on if it knows there's a rainstorm coming. It will also know that it's had 4 days of rain, so it knows it can go a couple days without watering. There are also, you can put in-ground water sensors that will work with this, but this is all completely automated with it. And it's magnificent. In the summer, because it's hotter and drier, it will make a change in the timing of what it was. And so it does this on a percentage basis. So if you said, well, my shrubs need more water all the time, it's okay. It'll adjust for that, but it'll give more water in the summer and less in the winter. So I really, really believe in Rachio. And if you're in Sacramento City, I know that you get some rebates on it. And I believe Sacramento County does. And I think the other counties do too. So look on it. And I know there's probably other competitors out there, but Rachio is the one. It's a weird name, but it is the one out there. And also, oh, I forgot to mention, when you're putting your information is because the type of sprinkler head you have, whether it's a constant spray or a rotator or one of those, or let's say it's just a drip for your shrubs and stuff, it will ask you what kind of head it is because that determines how much water it's putting out. So any questions on irrigation devices? All right. I encourage it. I'm sure a lot of you already have it. It does tie into HomeKit, but I think that's one I do more normally on the phone itself alone. So this is a good example. Now, I'm using Miros here as an example because I actually got one of the Miros things. And what I like about Miros, it's you can get it at the A Word, and they're very reasonably priced. And they offer it HomeKit, Google Assist, and Alexa. So it offers all of those. So the nice thing is this little plug will work for all of them. Now, this is an indoor plug, but and it's completely automated. So because it's HomeKit, you can just say the word "Hey" and the word "Siri." For instance, on my patio, my patio is enclosed, so I don't have to worry about weather. I have one of these out there, and I have a waterfall on my wall. You know, just one of those little hanging waterfalls that kind of goes, and it's just not a huge thing, but I don't want it running all the time. So when I go out there, I say the word "Hey" and the word "Siri," and I say, "Turn on my waterfall." And in fact, it's plugged into this. I don't have to do the switch. I don't have to plug it in. It's automatic. When I go back in the house, I say, "Turn off the waterfall," and it does it. So these are great for like floor lamps, anything that you have. Now, the best part about these switches is you can always go to the app itself, or you can use Alexa, or you can use Siri, but they all have a little button on the top and you can press it and turn them on and off manually, because automation is great until it doesn't work. So therefore, the nice thing is you do have a power switch on top and bottom, so you won't be stuck if you don't. So that's Miros. I really like them. Their customer support's been good, and I don't even know anything about the company. I'm not sure how safe and secure it is, but you know what? It's just a plug. So this, for this time of year, is perfect. This is an outdoor compatible one, same company. So it's compatible with all three of them. And the nice thing is this is good for your Christmas lights outdoor, your outdoor lights, or anything you want. And it just goes along the same way. So the other one fits on a wall switch. This gives you a little bit, you can put this on the end of an extension cord or do anything like that. All right. The next one is, light switches. So your wall switches, obviously you press them up, press them down, you do like that, turns the lights, turns them off. You can make your light switches be voice compatible also. And again, I pointed out the Miros here because it works for all three of them. Now, the other thing with the three things I've showed you with Miros, they don't require what's called a hub. You have to look, because more and more of the new things are not requiring hubs. The older devices required a hub to have the switch communicate with your automated device. These don't require it. Essentially what you do is you fire up the app, you've wired this into your house, and when you set it up in the app, actually even with HomeKit, it will look for that and set it up automatically. Now, somebody brought up when I presented this before to the general meeting, what about if you have a light switch and you've got 3 light switches right in a row? Well, if you have decor, which is this large rectangle type switches, all you do is you use your existing cover over it and you just replace the switch that's behind it, not the cover. You don't have to do all 3 of those automated, etc. The other thing is if you have the little flip switches up and down, you may have to get a different, they make covers that are decor also. You would have a 3-switch cover with 2 of your switches like that, but this would replace that little toggle switch on there. And again, if all else fails and you get frustrated with automation and it's not working, you can still use these switches on and off. And by the way, if you were to turn the switch off, it won't respond to the voice. You're able to keep it away from the voice if you want. So any questions on light switches? Again, that controls a lot of things, but it's simply an on or an off. All right. This is one of my favorite devices I bought ever. I think I've had it for 4 years, 3.5 years, somewhere in there. And it can control, what it does, it's a repeater. It does not work on HomeKit. It works on the others. The Bond device is $99. I looked on Amazon. Ross made one that does this, but they're out of stock. So I don't know what the scoop on it is. But the Bond device is $99. And how this happened was I saw a Costco flyer for a ceiling fan when I moved into the house I'm in now. And I said, oh man, they've got them, they're remotes, but they're not automated. I want to be able, because your remote control for your fan is never where you want it to be. So I said, well, I started looking for Wi-Fi fans, and there were some out there that were $900, and they would do voice and they'd have remote control. I was actually looking for just control on the phone, because if my fan remote wasn't with me, I know my phone was with me. So I was looking for that. Well, there were none of these Wi-Fi fans out there. Now I should say that, like I said, the Hunter and some of the other fans have HomeKit compatible, etc. But I got this Bond device and I said, if it works, great. If not, I'm sending it back to Amazon. So I got this thing to my house, and in my master bedroom is where my router is. And I have a ceiling fan in my master bedroom. So I configured it first, since this sits on your Wi-Fi. And the way this works is I take the fan remote, and when I'm in the app, I point it at this device, and your remotes come in 3 flavors. RF, or radio frequency. That would be the old type TVs used to use a sound like that, radio frequency. They use ultrasonic, or they use infrared. So infrared means the heat. It's like the little things, your TV remote is infrared, which means it's line of sight and it looks at it. Infrared, RF, which is radio frequency, which means it sends out a signal, kind of like your garage door opener is radio frequency. The garage door can be shut and you press the button. And the last one, radio frequency, infrared, and ultrasonic. That's just a sound. So that kind of goes like a radio wave, but it's a sound, and it's ultrasonic, means we can't hear it. It would be the equivalent of a dog responding to a whistle. Well, the device is responding to a whistle that you can't hear. So when I hold the remote up to this Bond device, it says, okay, configure your device, and I press the ceiling fan button, and it responds that it takes it. And then it asks you, okay, is this the FCC number on the back of your device? You say yes. And then it enrolls it. Then it has me test the light, because most ceiling fans have lights. Boom, the light works also. So I was loving that. I sat there, and with my iPhone, I'm not doing voice yet, but with my iPhone is how I'm configuring this. I press the button, the fan goes on. I press the light goes on. I'm loving it. So now I have to go take care of my other 3 fans. So I go out into my kitchen on the counter, and I take the Bond device with me, because it's already on my Wi-Fi. And I plug it in out there because I want to be near it, because I want to see the results. So I'm looking, I'm at the kitchen right near the sink, and I'm looking at my great room, which has a ceiling fan in it. And I configure that fan. And when I get it configured, I press the fan button, and the fan goes on, and I'm all happy. But as soon as I press that button, I hear this gzz, and I'm going, wow, that's weird. Well, maybe the fan made that noise. So then I try the light. Boom, the light goes, and I hear gzz. I go, it's working, but what is that sound? And I can't figure out where it's coming from. So I say, well, okay. So I turn back around, and I configure the kitchen fan. Do the same thing. I press the fan, it goes gzz. and it's almost the sound of an electrical sound, and I'm waiting to smell plastic, right? Burning plastic. I'm not. I hit the light, and I go, oh my God, what is it? So I'm sitting here, and I turn around, and I look in my kitchen sink, and I use Dawn detergent. And so in my sink is a bunch of Blue Dawn. And then I realize that I have an automated hand dispenser for my soap, which automatically, when I hold my hand under it, it detects the infrared from your hand and dispenses soap. But as geeky as I am, so what happened is the Bond device was sending that signal to my soap dispenser. But here's how too geeky I was for my own good. I said, oh my God, I can use the phone to dispense my soap into my hand. And then I thought for a second, I go, but usually your hand is going to be wet and soapy. Why would you want to do that? And I go, wait a minute, Ken, back up a second. Look at the forest for the trees. You already have an automated home soap dispenser. You simply put your hand under it. So now I got worried. I'm going, oh my God, is this Bond device always going to do my soap dispenser whenever I go do it? So I'm going, okay, well, I moved the Bond device. It's all working back into my bedroom, my master bedroom, where the router is. And whenever I activate my Bond device, no problem. My soap dispenser doesn't go off. But it was funny. And then since then, I've got a couple new fans that, like I said, are Hunter fans, and they respond to the Bond device because it ties in. I use the A word to use my Bond to adjust my fans. And then I use I can use Siri for my two new fans. But all I do, for instance, like right now, you won't be able to tell me behind me, but I say, Echo, turn master fan light off. And if you look at my face, it got a little darker. Echo, turn master fan light on. Great. Echo, turn master fan light on. All right. So that's the Bond device. It's fantastic. You might be able to find it at Miros. Any questions on ceiling fans? Oh, by the way, I have on my patio, I have shades that go up and down, and it's not officially supported, but what I did is each of the two, I have these two screens that go up and down to block the sun. I tried those devices to see if it would work with Bond. It never said it would, but sure enough, I was able to do it. So now when I go out on my patio, I can use my A device and say, raise the patio shade or close the patio shade, because it responded to that remote. And then I actually have some wall lights that I can use, either the outlet that we saw before, or I have another remote on that and it turns them on and off. And it's wonderful. And they do support one of the shade companies that have automated shades for your interior shades. So any questions on Bond or ceiling fan? This I just wanted to put in here because Hunter Douglas has a thing called Power View for shades that allow you to automate your shades. And to me, that's kind of one thing I'm missing. You know, I have plantation shutters throughout, and I have to manually open and close them because I have a great view, but it would be nice to automate those, but it's okay for right now. So the other thing is my garage door is automated. First of all, I love that my Tesla does do home link, and it senses when I'm coming up to my house and it will automatically open my garage door. But this allows you, like for instance, when I'm leaving, instead of, because if I get to the back door and I hit the button to open my garage, by the time I'm around the back of my car, the garage isn't fully open. So I use this device, and as I'm leaving, I say the A word, or Siri, and say, open my garage door. And it's already opening while I do it. But by integrating my garage door into this, when I say I'm going to bed tonight, it can actually check to make sure your garage door is closed. So that's not just the automation part, it's the security part of it. And with Miros, what's very interesting is I can set an alert to say, your garage doors, I say, what's the timer? I say, if my garage door has been open more than 15 minutes, I will always get a notification on my phone. So if I drive away and I forget to shut my garage door, then boom, it will tell me it's been open more than 15 minutes. Or if somehow somebody was able to hack your garage door, not through this, through the regular remote, you don't have to worry about this. You got to worry about the regular remotes. It would tell me my garage door open. So the MeROS is great. And this is very simple installation. Essentially, you got to think about it from your garage door opener on your ceiling. A wire goes over to your wall where your switch is. Well, that's only a 2, sometimes a 4-wire thing. This essentially is just installing another switch in there, and that switch is connected to your Wi-Fi. And in fact, it is the same as doing the button, and then you can use your different devices. So it doesn't matter what kind of garage door opener you have. It only matters that you have a switch there, and it connects very well. So I have another garage device, and then I'll ask about garage automation. The Chamberlain MyQ is awesome, except for a couple things. I have this, my actual garage door opener, before the MeROS came out. My garage door opener is a Chamberlain where I don't have to have this device, it's built into it. It is not HomeKit compatible, not compatible with A. It's not compatible to voice realistically, unless you pay extra. But because they're trying to make money on a subscription service. But I do love this because it makes my garage door Wi-Fi, and I can use the app and do it. But if you have a MeROS, you don't need this except for one thing. If you'll notice in the fine print right here, and I hope this deal is still on, this was a week or so, 2 weeks ago, but it's $30, $29.98 is the cost. But if you read down further, when you, later on after you get this, if you sign up for Amazon Key, which I'll discuss in a second, it's, you put in Key 30, you're going to get a $30 credit on anything from Amazon. Now, I'm going to explain this device, then I'll explain Key. This device works like an app. This basically connects to your existing garage door with the wire like the other one. But the nice thing is you put this sensor on your door, the little sensor here, and it can detect whether your garage door is closed or open, not by the little things on the side, the magnets. It can detect that by whether it's laying flat or whether it's upright. So the Chamberlain allows you to control it with Wi-Fi. Just don't look at it for your voice control part of it. Okay. The Key part of it. We all get Amazon packages, or most of us do. And this time of year, you've got to worry about porch pirates. Amazon, a year or so ago, a couple of years ago, came out with what they called Key, because porch pirates is a problem. And obviously, if we were getting ripped off a lot, people would stop getting stuff delivered from Amazon. So what happened is they developed a system with automated front doors where they would, an AM delivery person, Amazon off, an AM delivery person would be able to open up your automated front door, put the package inside, take a picture of it there, and then leave and shut your door. And the whole time it would, you had to have an automated front lock. Well, there's some inherent problems with that. I'm pretty trusting, but I did not want someone to be able to open my front door. Now, they can only do it when they're on duty and they're at that location because it's GPS based. So there's real security in Amazon's end of it. But the other thing is, let's say you had an alarm or a dog, that doesn't work. So they developed this, what's called Key. And the Key means that when I go to order something from AM, I can choose to have it delivered using Key. I can still have it put at my front porch if I want. I can do whatever else I want. But if Key is available on it, they will open up my garage door. When they arrive on scene in their app, it opens up the door. They have to be where they are. And that employee is the only one that can get it. And once he leaves, he doesn't have an opener for my garage. The system has an opener that talks to the MyQ and says, let's open that garage. Okay. So then they put the package wherever you say. I say on the left-hand side, and they usually put it right there. I have a camera in my garage. I have a little Wise camera, so I can always look at it if I want. But then they go, and I had a driver just last week I was here, so I went out to get the package, and he was having trouble shutting the door. It would not let him leave my house until he shut the garage door with his remote. And once that's done, they can't come back and open the garage door. And believe me, they know which employee it is. The only concern, and it's very minor, I have with this is they see what you have in your garage. So I wouldn't leave any large gold bars laying around or anything like that, because they might decide at a later time they can come break in. But they absolutely cannot get in using their phone that has key on it. It has to go through Amazon to do it. It has to be at the location, and you in fact have to have a package. So the safeguards are there. And to me, I like that because it's safer than putting it at the front door. So MyQ, this little device, sometimes it's on sale for $19.99. Otherwise, this deal is on there and you can get it. You're essentially getting it for free because Amazon is encouraging you to use it. The only downside about MyQ is it does not respond to your voice. So any questions on automated garage doors or any of this stuff, please ask. Everybody must be asleep, all 30 of you. Okay. Anybody? Oh, Mary, go ahead and ask. Unmute yourself. You can hold down your space bar.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Thanks. Sorry. This is kind of related. It's on the Apple TV, the device.
Yeah.
I have a very old one, maybe Apple TV 2. Can that use the Apple TV application? It gets confusing because you said you can use it to monitor some of these things, but when you go to the App Store, it looks like it's just for the Apple TV Plus, which is the streaming kind of service.
Yeah, so the second generation of the Apple TV had minimal apps that were out there. The newer version, the Apple TV, I guess it's fourth generation now, that has Siri and has the remote that's all black. If you have a silver remote,
yes,
you can do Apple TV Plus, I think, on it, but you can do whatever it has in there, but it doesn't do a lot of other stuff. The newer one that has the black remote that actually has a touchpad and it responds to Siri is the one that you would need for that. And there's some ways to get deals on those. For instance, T-Mobile is working on becoming a TV provider, and they're offering, if you buy 3 months worth of their service, they'll give you a huge discount on a newer Apple TV. But the newer Apple TVs do a lot more. If you've cut the cable, it's really beneficial because there's lots of apps, but it is a little more expensive because it is truly a computer. But I'd say that if you're trying to do home automation, believe it or not, your phone, so you don't have to have an Apple TV, you don't have to have a HomePod, because you can do everything by talking to your iOS devices or your computer with Siri to do it. It just may be less convenient.
So you're saying that with the little silver remote, the Apple TV app doesn't really work to be able to do much of anything.
But even on the new Apple TV, it doesn't do a lot for your home automation.
Okay.
Other than the fact it's another place to use the word hey and the word Siri.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, you bet. Good question, though. All righty. So let's see here. So the other thing is you can automate your front door. And I particularly put this one up. There's lots of other companies that do it, but owning rental properties, I love QuickSet, because if you'll notice on the screen, there's where your key goes, but there's a little slot right next to the key there. And what QuickSet does with this special thing, it's called Smart Key. It makes it very hard for people to do what's called bump key, which would be get in illegally. But secondly, you can change the tumblers. So in other words, let's say you were letting someone use your house for 2 weeks and you give them a key and they go away. You don't know if they made a copy of that key. Well, what you would do is, and obviously an automated door will tell you every time it's open or shut if you want it to. But what I can do with that is with this little Smart Key setup, I can go ahead and change the tumbler to a different QuickSet key. And so therefore I can change those as often as I want and kind of have a master and a non-master. But what I like about this one is because there are a lot of automated front door locks. This, by the way, goes over your deadbolt. So the other thing I should say is your deadbolt is the most secure lock on your front door. The one that's on the handle that turns, those can be jimmied with credit cards and things like that. So most of the newer homes have a locking deadbolt, but they just have a handle that opens and shuts the door. And, we used to have them where the handle had a lock in it. If you get a new deadbolt lock, don't even worry about the lock on the lower, or just don't lock it, because obviously it wouldn't be automated. But in this case, I like this one because I have a key hidden out, or not hidden, but in a special, it looks like a lockbox out on my water pipe out there, but I don't want to have to do with that. And I don't carry a key with me because more normally I go in and out of the garage. But in this case, I can use my phone, or I can use the proximity sensor with it, or I can use HomeKit to open it. And the other nice thing is there's a keypad. Now this keypad doesn't light up until you touch it, and then it comes up and it's a touch screen. And the beauty of this is, again, let's say you have a plumber coming and you can't be home. This is after COVID, and you can make a code specially for that plumber, and he can get in using that code, and then he shuts it, and then you can determine if that code, when you want that code to expire, or delete that code completely. And in fact, only your regular code does it. So you don't have to change all your codes. You can do these temporary codes. You can have multiple codes. Could be different families if you share a cabin in the mountains, things like that. And the nice thing about that is that does not depend on Wi-Fi. It does not depend on the phone or anything else. It's still a manual entry, and you still have key capability. I find that a lot of these automated locks out there, they try to be great automated, but what happens if it's not automated? So a good example, I had oral surgery, and the drug they gave me, somebody gave me a ride home, and I absolutely do not remember coming back. But obviously, because on my Ring camera, it shows me going up to the door, and the one I have, I tap it 3 times and it unlocks, only if my phone is with me. So anyway, this is pretty neat. Front door locks, August. Again, for HomeKit compatibility, I would look on Apple's site and see what ones are out there. But then in the decisions, the reason I love Quickset is because the actual lock part, the key part, I don't have to call a locksmith to change the tumblers. So any questions on front door locks? Okay, wow. So the Ring doorbell, this isn't really about automation, but I do really, really like the Ring. And what I used to have this one here, and unfortunately my doorbell is on the wall, not facing the street. So I had to get those adapters to make it turn around. But what I've done now is Ring makes a thing called the peephole camera. And by the way, Ring is not HomeKit compatible. It's owned by Amazon, so you got to know it's secure. But the new peephole cam is really neat. Amazon off. So the peephole camera goes where you have an existing peephole, and the battery and all the mechanism is inside, but outside is just the doorbell. So now instead of ringing the doorbell on the wall, they ring the doorbell right under the camera, and they're looking right at the door. And the view from the peephole is great. It basically replaces that glass peephole you have with their own peephole, which I can look through without it being a camera. I can look right through the peephole. And the cool thing is, because I don't know if you're aware, but there are certain lenses out there that people can put on the peephole and look into your house with, and it's a wide angle, but they can see in there. The peephole camera has a little slider on it, so you can block that. So that's the Ring doorbell. The Ring doorbell, it's free for a while. If you get it from Costco, you get a year for free, and then it's $3 a month for you to see your videos. And I hate monthly fees, but the year I got with my first one was great, so I decided it. And I've coupled mine with my Ring security system. So if you have Ring cameras and Ring spotlights and or a Ring security system, you get all of that for $10 a month as your fee. And if you're using the Ring alarm, which I love, the Ring alarm, that covers your central station monitoring. And I cannot, I'll bet you I can't find anybody out there that is only paying $10 a month for their real central station monitoring. The cheapest I know of is Simply Safe, which is 15. And I would venture to guess that the majority of you, if you have central station monitoring, you're paying over $30 a month. So the other thing with the Ring alarm system is I can, as I'm leaving, say the word A and say, turn my alarm on. But I wouldn't want to be able to stand at my front door and yell at the top of my lungs, say, aim, that word, open, or turn my alarm off. I wouldn't want to say that. So what happens is when I disarm my alarm, it requires me to say a 4-digit passcode number. So it's safe. Obviously, if somebody knew that, they could do it, but you know. So any questions on Ring or the alarms or things like that? Because alarms are a big deal. And I know a lot of you are paying a lot of money for yours. And I know that the Ring alarm has no contract. And the nice thing about the Ring alarm is I can decide to not have it monitored at the central station. And therefore, what will happen is if something were to happen at my house, it will give me a notification on my phone, and then I can deal with it how I want to deal with it. I do not have to have monitoring, but in fact, I will know if glass is broken or doors have been opened, things like that. So any question? And the Ring alarm, I'll tell you, it's good price. It's good price. It's all wireless. You can install it yourself very easily. And if you have an existing hardwired alarm system, they do have what's called a retrofit kit that you can get rid of ADT and all of those others. And the retrofit kit is $199, and it uses your existing window and door and ultrasonic sensors, or IR sensors, excuse me, that are all hardwired. So that's an option. And again, Ring at $10 a month. That's your fee to store your videos from all your cameras and your lights, and that's your alarm monitoring. If you don't get the alarm, it's still, if you have a lot of the Ring cameras around your house, that would be, you'd be paying $10 a month for that. So any Ring questions from anybody? Okay. So there's other things, automation.
Ken,
Oh,
Ken,
go ahead.
is that for the whole house?
What, the alarm?
Yeah, the Ring alarm. Does that cover the whole house?
Well, yeah, you get devices for the Ring alarm.
Okay.
So what I'll do is remind me when I get off of the keynote here. Actually, let's do it right now. We have time. So I'm going to go to.
God, Ken is so fast.
And I'll go to Ring. Ring alarm. So the Ring alarm, when you get it, it's very modular. So what it is you have a 5-piece kit, an 8-piece kit. You have all these different kits you can get, and they're devices. So let's go ahead and hit the 14-piece kit, because that'll be the biggest amount of things. So what you have on the screen here is, actually, let me open that image. So right here is the control panel. You can have 1 or 2 control panels. You can have a control panel in your bedroom. Like most smart alarms, you probably have one in your bedroom so you can arm it and disarm it. And you probably have one when you come in and out of the garage or the front door. Mm-hmm. Well, got to remember that you don't necessarily need 2 panels with this one, because you can arm and disarm it with your voice. So you don't have to have one in your bedroom. So then they have other parts of the device, like this is a noise sensor. This is the hub. This is what hooks to your router. And then all these other devices, these that I'm showing you right here, those are your door or window switches. And they're all stick-on. They don't need to be wired. They can be all wireless. In fact, your control panel can be wireless. You just have to have, it is battery operated for backup, but you usually just put it right where there's a power source. And then they have these little ones you set in your kitchen or your great room that are infrared detectors that tell you if anybody's in the house right there. So you can buy all these pieces how you want it, but it's super easy installation, and professional monitoring is through the same central station that your current alarm company uses. And it's $10 a month for the monitoring, which also still gives you any of the cameras you have and the Ring doorbell for the video part of it. So it is separate from the cameras. And again, it's Amazon and it's great. And you can do most everything with it with voice. So that whole kit system was 170 something. And then, but check at Costco, because Costco has some kits and they're on sale off and on also.
Great, thank you so much.
And once you get the kit, then you can just buy the extra pieces you need. Best thing is to do, the best value is to buy the kit with you most. Now, people always ask about glass break sensors. I used to work in the alarm business, and glass break sensors, they're not that effective, and they're a pain in the butt, and they get false alarms. And I also do not have every single, so let's say somebody's breaking in a window that you have in the living room. They're going to break the glass and they're going to come in through that. They're probably not even going to slide the glass door, right? Unless you've left it ajar, they're not going to do it that way. So once they get in the house, they're susceptible to the infrared detector, the IR detector. And so therefore, yes, you might lose 10 seconds, but in fact, you're still getting alarmed that they're there. So glass break sensors, I don't put a lot of credence in. I do put it in motion sensors. And I, in fact, do not have every one of my windows wired, because I figure if anybody gets in my window, they're going to do the infrared. But I do have all of my doors with a switch. And so I have the little sensor switch. And again, it comes with sticky tape, and you can put it up yourself, and it's all connected wirelessly.
Wow.
All right. Any other questions on alarms?
Wait.
Go ahead.
So what about, so Ken, what about the, like, for example, our alarm system, if we're not here, or even if we are, it connects to a central station.
That's what this does. That's the $10 a month.
Okay.
And then you're required in almost all municipalities to also have an alarm permit. I believe in Sacramento, it's $40 a year. Up here in Lincoln, it's $20 a year. And that's anytime you have central station monitoring, no matter who it's from, you have to do that, because they get the call for 911. And they also have the capacity, if you have false alarms, to charge you if they've done too many responses. So that's how that alarm permit works. And that's required on any central station monitoring. But remember, you can use the Ring alarm, as I did for a year, without any central station monitoring, and I still get it notifying me on my phone.
Great. Thank you.
You're welcome. So there are other things that have automation, and for instance, now I don't have this microwave, but I have a Whirlpool microwave that the nice thing is with it, it'll give me an alert when it's done. I can set it on the phone. Hey, most of the time you just use the thing. But the nice thing is I can scan the QR code on certain foods, and it will automatically, it says what it needs, and it'll automatically program the microwave to the right time and what it needs, if it's a reheat or anything like that. But this is a convection oven. For ovens, I think that it's nice because it'll let you know when it's done preheating and things like that. It'll notify you either through, it'll speak through your devices, or it'll give you a notification on your phone. But actually, I think that's something that's coming for washers and dryers. And a lot of the new automated ones do that also. So I don't think an oven or a microwave, my microwave had gone bad, so I had to replace my microwave anyway. So of course I got one that was connected, but I don't think you need that. It's not a huge deal. Okay, come on here. There we go. Again, these things are highly unlikely that they can be compromised. Your microwave if anybody hacked into your microwave, they can't tell what you're doing. They're telling you're cooking food, okay? So these things have security in there. And again, the other thing is let's say you decide not to use HomeKit, but you decide to use AM. If the device itself is HomeKit compatible, you can count on it being more rigorously checked out, because anything that's HomeKit compatible, Apple will have checked out extensively. So it's a little bit better, higher badge, even if you decide to not use HomeKit for your automation, and Alexa's just the same. So, you can do either one. And again, look for it to show, yeah, you can use Google Assistant. Generally speaking, if it's HomeKit, it's probably AM compatible, but not all AM compatibles are HomeKit compatible. And again, it's really easy because we know how cheap it is to get the Echo Dots these days. Those little things you can get for Christmas, you get them with a smart switch or something for $30. So that being said, again, weigh that. I know some of you are concerned. Don't worry. Mary, go ahead. You have a question.
I thought it was an important point that Karen made last time about keeping on your products, keeping the information. So if you move or anything.
Oh yeah. And you know what, Karen, that was perfect when she did that. So what happens is with HomeKit devices, there's a QR code in the setup instructions that makes it very easy. You scan that with your phone in the app, and it sets that up. And whenever I get any device, I have the drawer where all my manuals go in, right? Because they're still analog, right? But what I do is, if it's a HomeKit device, I make sure I at least keep that barcode, because if I get a new router and I don't set things up right, or I have to reset something up, or I move, you really want that QR code to set up the new device. And it's very difficult on certain things you set up that way. Some things in HomeKit it will self-discover, but Karen had pointed that out during the general meeting, and Mary, you were very right to bring it up. It keep that, and I just keep it in with the manual in the drawer where it is. So that's very, very important. Another tip I'll make to you, and I know that sometimes everybody changes routers. Well, if I were to look at my router, I probably have no less than 20 devices hooked to my Wi-Fi. Now, if I were to change my router, I'm going to have to change a few of those devices. For instance, my front door lock. If I change my Wi-Fi, if I put a different name in there. But here's the trick. When you set up new Wi-Fi, what you want to do is use the existing name exactly and the password exactly that your old router had for your Wi-Fi, because then your devices will recognize it. And one little caveat that you see on these devices, especially the plugs and the lights, and I'll talk about lights in a minute, that they a lot of times don't go on the 5 gigahertz band, but any 5 gigahertz router also has a 2.4 gigahertz band, and that's what they operate on. So it may not show up on your 5 gigahertz, but it'll be on your 4, or your 2.4. But if you get a new router, use the exact same name. So lights are a whole nother thing. I have, for instance, I could have automated my front door light and my above garage door light. I could have automated those. But what I did is because I don't care about automating them, what I did do is I made them motion sensitive. So I got a light from a company called Sengled, SENGLED. You can get them in Amazon. And so they don't come on during the daytime if they detect motion. So they're a certain time, they're day, night, and you can set them to detect motion. Or believe it or not, if you click this is one where you want to keep the manual. If you click the switch, the light switch, 5 times in quick succession, then they'll be day, night, but they won't be motion and things like that. So I also have on the side of my house where my garage cans are, I have just the little light you have by a man door there. And rather, the light switch is in the garage. I don't take my trash out that way. I go the other way. So I just got a motion sensitive bulb that sits there, and it's not day night, and I don't care because nobody walks by there very often. So those kinds of things are almost the type of automation that I got with my soap dispenser. There's no reason to automate some of those. I'm very lucky the company's no longer making these, but I have my lights that are in my great room and in my kitchen. They're can lights, and they detect my motion, and they come on, and and then they can stay on for a certain amount of time, and then they go off. I never have to touch my light switches. But by the way, there are now those wall switches. We saw the Miros earlier that has a wall switch. It doesn't do it, but they do make them where they will detect when you enter the room and then when you exit the room. And to me, that's so nice to not have to worry about. I have LEDs throughout my house, and I have solar, so I don't really, I produce more electricity than I use, so it's not a big deal, but it's just nice to not have to hassle with it. Okay, so I think that's it. And what was the thing I said I was going to check on Amazon for? I was going to check on, somebody was, I said, remind me. Oh, I know, the MyQ. I'll check that real quick. See if that deal is still there for the garage door opener. So the MyQ. Yeah, you still get a credit. So it's $29.98, and you get a credit of $30. That's called the MyQ. The credit isn't right away. The credit is once you sign up for another, when you sign up for your first delivery to have stuff come that way. I know what else I was going to check is the Miros for ceiling fans. Oops, it auto-corrected Miros. Other companies. The reason I want the Miros is because I know that it's HomeKit compatible. It doesn't look like it is. Switch. No, it's just light switches. It's not fan compatible right now. So Bond is the only one. Let me make sure Bond is still here. Bond device. Yeah, still there. Here's some other ones, and I have no idea whether they work or not. Oh, the Bond is only $79, so it's down from $99. Again, it is not HomeKit, but all you got to do is have an Echo device for it. Yeah, it looks like I bought mine March of 2018. Any other questions? This is the time.
Does the Miros work with the device inside the garage?
Hang on, two of you were talking. What was the question about the Miros?
Does it work with the device inside the garage to automatically open it, or is it a separate?
Well, the Miros had its own opener that I had in the keynote that you do. So, and it's just done with voice. Let me go back to it. So this is, oh, that's not it. So this is the device that does the garage door.
Okay.
So the one that does your fans won't do your garage door. And the Miros doesn't seem to have a fan one out right now. I don't know if they had troubles, they lost who were manufacturing or what, but you know, it doesn't work for ceiling fans. Again, many of the new ceiling fans have that, but to be honest, if you have in the room you're in with that fan, all you need is an Echo Dot and you can activate the Bond. Or you can do it from your phone. Good question. And I think, Charles, did you have a question? Or who was
Yes.
someone else spoke up?
How do
I
I
have-
get into, how do I get into my 2.4 gigahertz in my router? It's at 5.0.
Okay,
and I
5.
can't figure how to add it. Huh?
Are they both named the same? Do they both say like Charles
Uh,
Network?
It says Netgear 20 is the name of the network.
And then one's Netgear 25G?
Network 20-5G
Okay,
-1.
right. And then the other one just says Netgear Network, right?
Yes.
Okay, so the one that doesn't have the 5 after it means it's a regular old 2.4.
And that is 2.4.
Absolutely.
Let me-
And just so since we're kind of on this whole 2.4 versus 5, because I know you guys have a lot of routers that are like that. There's kind of there's 4 flavors of routers and Wi-Fi. First of all, if you're getting any new routers, make sure it's Wi-Fi 6. That's the newest implementation. It's faster and more robust. But the old routers we used to have or still have around is 2.4 gigahertz. 2.4 gigahertz is kind of the pickup truck of the bands. And what 2.4 gigahertz is, believe it or not, it's the same frequency that the microwave cooks food with, but it does it by making the waves hit each other. 2.4 is very safe, doesn't have any problem at all, but the microwave can upset it. Also, there's so many other people that have 2.4 routers around that it's like when you're driving across country and you get 2 or 3 radio stations in your car. You're trying to listen to one, but then you get closer to another one and you get all staticky. Well, you'll notice that doesn't happen in HD radio or FM radio in your car because the narrow band that they're transmitting on doesn't cross over. So 2.4 is that way. It's a very busy, there's lots of routers with there's only 11 channels. And even if yours says it's on channel 5, it's on 5, but it bleeds over to 7 and over to 3. So it messes it up a little bit. So 2.4 though is the workhorse. 2.4 travels very far, but then they came up with 5, and it's not 5G like in a phone. It is 5 gigahertz, but it's totally different than 5G for phones. And what the 5 megahertz one is, 5 gigahertz is, it's more defined. There are many more channels, and in fact, your bleed over, it's called, on each channel isn't very much, but 5G doesn't go as far. So in other words, if you're sitting right next to your router, you can do either one of them. But if you're way at the other end of the house and there's a lot of walls in the way, you're probably better off using 2.4, and you will see. 2.4 isn't as fast as 5, but remember, you're only as good as your weakest link. If you're on DSL, it won't matter whether you're on 2.4 or 5 because they both exceed that speed. But 2.4 is more compatible and it travels farther, but 5 might be better for you speed-wise, and that's just a better thing. And it just, and the new Wi-Fi 6 still has 2.4 and 5. It's just they've implemented new protocols. So on your routers, they're both there. And if you're close by it and you get good coverage, go ahead and be on the 5 gigahertz. Otherwise, be on 2.4. And in fact, there's a possibility when you set these up, you may have to have your phone, if you're using the app, be in the 2.4, because most of these devices don't offer 5 because they're not transmitting a lot of data. They're not like watching a video on YouTube. They're simply, it's as simple as a light switch. It's on or it's off, right? So that's very little bandwidth, and they do just great on 2.4.
Now, Ken, let me clarify. You said that if my router is on Netgear 20, that automatically is 2.4. Is that correct?
It should be, if it's not mentioned, because what happens is, even on Apple routers and things, it won't put a suffix on. Some routers do. Some routers will put 2.4 after it, but most routers just have that. That's called the SSID number of name. So the name, whatever your router name is, when it configures automatically, it makes the same name for the 5 gigahertz, but it usually puts a -5 or something after it, just so you know which one they are. And they both work through the router. For instance, your printer could be on your Wi-Fi network hooked to the 2.4, but you're on 5G on your phone and it'll still go through your router and know it. It's just that the devices won't work on that. And there's an occasional time when you're setting up, you may have to turn the phone, and this setups will show you that, but you may have to put the phone on your 2.4. And on most routers, it's the exact same password.
Okay, I have a new weather station that's 2.4,
Right.
and I've been trying to hook it up, and I haven't been successful. So
Well, try. And are you hooking it up using the app on the phone?
I'm using, yes.
So try it, putting your phone on the 2.4 network. That's just the Netgear 20, and see if that lets you do it. And what I would recommend is unplug and unplug your router, and also plug and unplug the weather station and see, because that could be a stumbling block. It's not always. All right. Good question, Charles.
Thank you.
Mary, you have a question?
you.
Go right ahead.
Yeah, I was trying to see what my router has, and I went and opened it in preferences general and looked at network preferences, but it doesn't say whether it's 2.4 or 5.
Well,
how do we find out?
And normally it wouldn't matter.
Right. But
So-
since we're talking about it, I was trying to
So if
determine.
you go up here, so you guys can see my screen here. So I'm on Ken's Wi-Fi network. So my neighbor on one side has regular Wi-Fi and Wi-Fi 5G, and my neighbor on the other side has regular Wi-Fi and Wi-Fi 5G. So that's what you can see. Now my Apple router does both in one, but I wouldn't really worry about it. If there's not two there, it may not support it, or Apple devices tend to go for what's best.
And can you find an ancillary question? Can you find out, like, for those of us who have more than one network, can we find out what's attached to each network anyway, easily?
Yeah, it's usually in your, so like, if you have an Apple one, it's Airport Utility, or you go into the setup page for the router. So if I go to my Airport Extreme here, enter my password. There's my wireless clients right there.
Okay. Okay, thank you. I don't, just to see to make sure that things are compatible, signed up exactly the same.
Well, if the device is working, you don't have to worry about it.
Right.
That's just, I was saying that as a caveat when you set it up. Most of the time, and especially with HomeKit, these things just happen automatically. Don't overthink it, but if you do have an issue, it might be the 2.4 deal. So obviously I don't have enough things on here. My car is connected. There's my 2 fans, the Ring, the Raccio. See, I practice what I preach. And you'll notice the Apple Watch is connected to my Wi-Fi. Everybody thinks the Apple Watch is only Bluetooth, but if your phone is on Wi-Fi, I could, let's say I was at a gym back when you used to be able to do that. I could keep my phone in my locker, and as long as they had Wi-Fi and my phone was connected to the Wi-Fi, with my phone asleep, my Apple Watch would still be connected, even though I don't use cellular on it, way on the other side if it's still in Wi-Fi. So the Apple Watch uses Bluetooth and Wi-Fi. That's your little trivia for the day. Any other questions? Boy, I did fill the whole time. Boy, I can just babble, can't I? All right. So anyone else have any other questions, please ask.
Ken, this is Kathy, and it's totally aside from everything that we've been doing today, but I'm looking into getting an Apple Watch.
Uh-huh.
And I'm wondering, someone said, oh, you can get it on Apple or you can get it on Verizon.
Okay, so that goes along with what I was just saying, and I almost mentioned it. So the Apple Watch comes in 2 flavors, as do iPads. They come Wi-Fi only or Wi-Fi and cellular.
Yeah, I want Wi-Fi and cellular. I know that much.
Okay, well, but maybe everybody doesn't. But it's about $100 difference, $100 to $120 difference. But then, and what that allows is, so like I told you, if your phone's nearby, your watch can do whatever it wants. Your watch can do things autonomously if it's Wi-Fi. And if your watch doesn't have cellular, it would work in the gym situation that I just outlined.
Right.
But there is the ability on an Apple Watch to have a cellular battery or cellular card in it. And it's signified by on the crown, there's a little red ring around it. So you know it's a cellular one. You pay extra for it. You do not have to pay the $10 a month that the carrier charges. But if you want your watch to work autonomously without a phone being nearby and for safety, you pay $10 a month and you can, it's just like having, for the most part, your phone with you, but you don't have to. Your watch communicates over the cell towers. And it's amazing that this little thing you wear on your wrist can reach out and do that and last the whole day. But what I do with my watch is I buy the cellular version. I'm too cheap to spend $10 a month. But if I'm ever somewhere without my phone runs out of battery, my phone gets lost or stolen or broken, I can always call 911 from my cellular watch, even though I'm not paying for a service. And that for me in the outdoors is the important part. And I don't have to pay a fee. The $10 fee is nice because then if you go out for a walk and you're listening to a podcast or iHeartRadio or music or anything, your watch is connected and you pay the cellular service. $10 a month isn't bad. And many times the cellular carrier will give you a discount on the watch that they pay your discount to you over a 2-year period by taking it off your bill. So you're paying them $10, but you're getting something back on it. So that's the thing. Did that answer your question?
Yes, but which one I don't know which one I should get. Should I get a new one? Should I get a refurbished one? I don't know which one to get.
Well, it depends on your choices. So if you get this, so the newer watches have the EKG. If you have any heart issues, you're worried about it, that all of them have heart monitors. So the SE and stuff. But then if you want to get the EKG, where you can actually see and it'll detect if you have AFib, that's one step up. And then the newest Apple Watch, the Apple Watch 6, has an oxygen reader, which for COVID, it's the pulse oximeter, and it's beneficial for that. Or if you want to see how efficient you are and it charts your oxygenation levels. That's been the new thing to it. Also, the newer ones have they're more, the screen is more visible more of the time, but you just have to do your own research. And I don't encourage people to buy the more expensive version of the watches in the same. Don't get the 6 that's more expensive because you may want to upgrade it in 1 or 2 years. And then it's the same function in the watch. All of them function the same except by model. The one thing that you want to get to is as we get older, we worry about fall detection. Well, they have fall detection, and then it will call 911 for you if it senses you've fallen, things like that. So you really have to weigh it and see. Roy, you have a question. Go right ahead.
Yeah, it's not related to today. It's an iCal question. Is that okay?
Okay. Oh, I just muted you. Unfortunately, I'm sorry. Go ahead and unmute yourself.
Yeah, I have a question that's not related to today. It's an iCal iPhone question.
What's your question?
Okay. My wife uses Gmail. I only use Apple Mail. And
Right.
I think that's what throws her. But on her iCal, she gets double entries for the holidays that Apple puts in.
Yeah, so I'll bring up my calendar.
So I think what it is, and
on the Mac that it's the problem.
I think what it is in her phone, under settings and password and account, she has iCloud Drive and Gmail.
Yeah, but it's really simple. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. So on your regular calendar, all you have to do is go over here where it says where the calendars go.
I don't see your screen.
Oh, I'm sorry. My fault. Hang on. I'll show you how to do it on the Mac and the iOS device. So here's my calendar. So on the left-hand side is the tray. So if you click view and you say show sidebar, oh, not tab, view window.
Tap on the word
Calendar
calendars.
list, or don't hide.
Tap on the word calendars up in the
Yeah,
menu bar.
and that toggles it too.
Yes.
Thank you. So all you would do is over here on the Mac is you tell by the colors what it is and just disable one of the holiday ones that's over here.
You can't disable the ones that Apple puts in.
You can check them, you can uncheck them and then they won't show up.
Well, she's okay with one entry, but not two. And I'm wondering if
What I'm saying is just uncheck one of them and then it hides it. It's still there, but it hides it. It doesn't show.
okay, can I finish my question?
Okay.
Do you use Gmail?
Yeah.
Under your security or settings and password and accounts, do you just list Gmail or just
I don't-
iCloud?
Because when you have mail and then you have contacts, calendars, and notes. I only use iCloud. Does she have an iCloud account?
Yes.
Is it the same as yours?
No.
Okay, then just use iCloud for all of that because it muddies the waters when you use Gmail. The best for syncing on all of this is don't even have those accounts turned on in account settings.
So in her account, she should delete the
She doesn't have to
Gmail.
delete the account. She just turns off the calendar part.
I'm
But
trying a different route.
Don't do it if there's a whole bunch of events in there.
Yeah, will she lose those?
She won't lose them. It just turns off viewing them. This is a tech question that takes a little more time than we have here.
Okay.
So,
all right, thanks.
But yeah, and then the same thing on your Apple device. It's really what is displayed and what's not displayed, and you don't have to necessarily delete them. All right, anyone else? Any other questions?
Yeah, I have a question.
Go ahead.
We have an AT&T on our TV. It has a router modem.
Right.
Is there any point in trying to get a router modem that has 5G?
Well, how old is, well, so, okay, so that's for everybody. There's modems and there's routers. The modem is what it's called a modem. It stands for modulator demodulator, which means it takes your signal and puts it out over the wires. It can be over the cable that you get from Xfinity Comcast, or it can be the phone line that you get there. But that modem is what translates the information. And then in addition to that, a router is what distributes it to all your devices. A modem, you could plug your computer directly into the modem, but only one device, your computer, would be on the internet. So a router is like that extension cord that has a bunch of outlets on it. It lets it go everywhere and it does it smartly. And so what happens is there are many devices where the modem and router are in one, and that works fine, or separately works fine. So how old is your AT&T modem?
Well, we got it about a year ago before the 5G came out.
Well, now 5G, you probably have, don't confuse it with 5G. 5 gigahertz in Wi-Fi has been out for 7 years.
Right.
It's not the same as 5G about a phone. So that's, I would be willing to bet your router has 5G.
Okay.
Or 5 gigahertz, excuse me. It's
Okay.
unfortunate how they name these things.
Yeah, well, I don't want to have to pay for another modem if it's the router modem is one device.
Right, and you're paying monthly for that. Now, are you using do you have a home phone through AT&T?
Yeah, I have a 12 Pro phone.
No. Do you have a home phone?
Oh, no, I don't have a home phone.
Okay, so you can actually purchase your own modem router. If you have a service through them for their phone service, whether it's Comcast or AT&T, you can't buy your own modem because it's also a phone. But if you do this, you can do your own. But you're probably okay. 5G is the part of phone, and that's totally different. We're talking about 2.4 gigahertz versus 5 gigahertz, and any router built within the last 7 years should have 5 gigahertz.
Okay. So it has nothing to do with.
And you may not need it. Are you on DSL?
No.
Your AT&T internet, is it fiber?
Yes.
Okay. If you're fiber, it might make a difference. You're on DSL, it doesn't matter because your speed of DSL isn't enough to be faster than 2.4. And again, remember, 2.4 doesn't permeate as far in your house.
Right. Okay.
Good question. Great questions, everybody. Anybody else have any? It doesn't have to be a great question, just any question. Mary's waving by or asking questions. Okay. All right. I think that's it.
Thanks a million, Ken. You're just such an invaluable resource.
Well, oh, and I'll stop now. And now that
You
you've
make
said
the
that, I'll stop.
complex simple.
Now that you've said that, I'll stop the recording.